Now first off, we have to talk about a man from Sweden. And no, it's not you, Viktor Gyökeres, aka the best number 9 in football right now. No, it's not you, Alexander Isak. Yeah, it's not you. And no, it's not you, Zlatan, with your big nose. I actually have a big nose as well, so it's not really a good joke. I'm talking about Henrik Larsson, a striker that actually made his name known at Celtic. With 242 goals in 315 appearances, Henrik Larsson is the all-time top goal scorer of Celtic, one of the oldest and most proud football clubs in the world, earning himself 4 Scottish Premier League titles while he was there, whilst also being the top scorer in Scotland 5 out of the 6 seasons that he was there. And with all this, how does the world view him? He's just another guy. You know, it was only Scotland. Who the hell cares? Like, what is Scotland even known for? Shrek? Well, that is not my opinion. That is some of you guys' opinions. But in my opinion, you can't throw these accusations of him only doing it in the Scottish League. Because when you look at him on a global scale, he made things happen. With a European Golden Boot in the 2000 to 2001 season, where he scored 53 goals in 35 games in the league alone. Then you go to the 2003 UEFA final, where he scored both of Celtic's goals against Porto. Yes, Jose Mourinho's Porto, and even though he did lose 3-2, he could leave that game with his head held high. And then you can even sprinkle on the fact that at 33 years old, he walked over to Barcelona and said, "Let me help you guys out." Transferring on a free, winning La Liga twice, a Spanish Super Cup, and also helping Barcelona in a Champions League final. And that Champions League final was back in 2006 against Arsenal, where he was thrown in as a super sub in the second half. And whilst this Barcelona side were 1-0 down with the likes of Eto'o and Ronaldinho looking invisible, Larsson stepped up, teeing up the equaliser for Eto'o, then teeing up Belletti for the second. He was instrumental in this final, making a big impact off the bench for Barcelona. 2 assists in a substitute performance had Thierry Henry in the post-match press conference complaining about how he didn't see Ronaldinho, he didn't see Eto'o, but he saw Larsson, grabbing a Champions League trophy in his last game for the club and cementing himself in the history of football. He also had a stint at Manchester United and scored 37 goals and 106 caps for Sweden. And I'm pretty sure he's like the all-time Europa League or UEFA Cup top scorer. I just don't understand why people discredit Larsson just because he played the majority of his career for Celtic. And that's why he's the first player on this list of underrated players. And from Henrik Larsson being outcast because he spent the majority of his career in Scotland, let's go to Brazil, where there was another victim of outcasting, but not for the reason that you think. Mainly because during his time, there was still so many stars around him. That player is Rivaldo, who growing up in Brazil had a bunch of problems. This was a childhood filled with many problems, whether it was physical or emotional. A player who was rejected numerous times but never gave up. And that's what led him to being the great player that he would eventually become, winning a Ballon d'Or and also FIFA World Player of the Year, whilst also grabbing a World Cup, a Champions League, Copa America twice, scoring 130 goals for Barcelona, scoring in 5 of 7 games for Brazil in the World Cup. Back in 1999, Rivaldo was the term great, the best player on planet Earth, winning the Ballon d'Or with over 500 votes compared to David Beckham's 194. This wasn't a contrast, this was a coronation of a king. He would score 19 goals in his debut season for Barcelona, then 24 in the next, whilst also winning La Liga back-to-back in 1998 and also 1999. And during his time at Barcelona, in 235 games, he would score 130 goals. And one singular moment that just defines this guy's greatness during this period of brilliance was that hat-trick. Back in June of 2001, Barcelona had to beat Valencia or they wouldn't have qualified for the Champions League. And during this game, there would be one man that could be credited with this win: Rivaldo. Now his first goal would be a disgusting free kick, absolutely filthy. But then Valencia would equalise. And then for that second goal, he picks the ball up 25 yards out. Looks up. They've given him way too much room. He takes a shot and it's buried into the back of the net again. Managing to fake the defender out and give him a bit of space, he's made some room, picked a shot, and it's gone in. But this wouldn't matter again because Valencia have tied up the score. But late on in the game was that peak moment where Frank de Boer would chip the ball toward the 18-yard box, but it's reached Rivaldo on the edge of it. And in slow motion, this guy has chested the ball and done a bicycle kick into the bottom right corner of the goal. What is going on? Yeah, this ain't Baller League. Yeah, this was a La Liga match. Clutch moment. Rivaldo has just scored a hat-trick, but also 3 of the most outrageous goals that some of your favourite players in football wouldn't even dream of doing. And this just goes to show that Rivaldo is criminally underrated, because I know for a fact that hardly any of you knew that this hat-trick was even a thing. Even me, the guy making this video. You know, I had to fact check myself, because usually with a lot of these videos, I just be having conversations with my family and they tell me, oh yeah, this guy did this back in the day and no one talks about it. And I'm thinking, wait, did he actually do that? And then I've gone and seen the clip. Bro, this is not AI. This is not CGI. This is real. Now, after this brilliance that Rivaldo would execute for Barcelona, you would also see a successful spell with Rivaldo taking Brazil to the World Cup back in 2002. Scoring in 5 of Brazil's 7 games in a tournament that was honestly spotlighted by the brilliance of Ronaldo, Rivaldo was a key part of this Brazilian side, helping his side on multiple occasions, with one of my favourite performances with him coming up against England back in 2002, where he was teeing up with the likes of Ronaldinho. Imagine, back in 2002 they had Rivaldo, Ronaldinho and Ronaldo as their front three, arguably one of the greatest front threes in, international history. And I know that his career would kind of fizzle out with spells at AC Milan and things like that, but still, he needs to be recognized as an all-time great for what he did during his peak years. And especially in Barcelona history, you don't hear a lot of their fans, talking up the brilliance of Rivaldo. You hear more conversations about Ronaldinho, Ronaldo and Romario. And another man that was also in another side that wasn't really given enough love during his time is Edin Džeko, the Bosnian diamond. Because I mean, how do you score like 393 goals and are still underrated? It makes no sense. This guy has also scored 50 in 3 of Europe's top 5 leagues. Džeko is another player who grew up in a country torn by war, whose career started in Bosnia before being shipped to Czech. And when you look at his early resume, it will tell you, because there is not one club that I could even pronounce the name of. And then finally, after years of work, Wolfsburg would sign him. And paired up top with the likes of Graffiti, this guy would take over the Bundesliga, forming one of the most lethal strike forces in Bundesliga history and causing one of the biggest upsets in Bundesliga history back in 2008/2009. He would help this Wolfsburg side win the Bundesliga over, the likes of Bayern Munich, with Džeko tallying 26 goals and 10 assists in 32 games. This would be a magic partnership with him and Graffiti, with Graffiti honestly taking a lot of the spotlight during this season because of his brilliant individual moments. And then after writing this historic script with Wolfsburg, he would make a big move to Manchester City, with them paying £27 million for the guy, a club record at the time. And what does Džeko do from there? He turns up in one of the most iconic Premier League games in the history of the competition. May 13th, 2012, with Manchester City needing a win to win the league over Manchester United, Džeko contributes, helping this Manchester City side beat QPR and also scoring the goal before the famous Aguero goal. It was Džeko. If Džeko doesn't score that goal, there is no Aguero moment. And that's pretty much saying that one of the most iconic moments in English Premier League history rests upon the shoulders of Edin Džeko, the Bosnian diamond. You eventually see him play for AS Roma in Italy, and over there he was hailed for scoring 119 goals in all competitions, whilst also being the top scorer in Serie A in the 2016/17 season, tallying 29 goals. He is statistically one of the most prolific strikers of the 21st century, and also the 3rd highest scorer in Roma's modern history. And then whilst he was still balling out in Italy, he would make another move eventually to Inter, where he won 2 Coppa Italias, 2 Super Cups, and also helped the Inter side reach a Champions League final. And then you go to Bosnia and you realize He's the captain, all-time top goal scorer for the nation, all-time most capped player, dragging a nation that didn't even exist when he was born to a World Cup in 2014. And then a generation later, he would help them qualify again at like 40 years old. Like, people don't realize, but Edin Džeko can be put up there in conversations as one of the best strikers from the 2010s era, but he's got that longevity too. A striker that's also been around the entire time when the likes of Lewandowski's getting all the praise as a longevity striker. Džeko's been here. Then the next player that we're going to talk about that carried another side nearly to glory is even better. Even scarier. A guy that is actually scary. He might wake you up in the night and bite your shoulder. Yes, we're talking about Luis Suárez. Because 2013/14 Luis Suárez was something else. This was another carry job, but even more, obvious, because some of the things that this guy was pulling off throughout this season were undescribable. Liverpool would finish on 84 points during this season, and despite them not winning the Premier League, Luis Suárez would lead them nearly there to the promised land. And the obvious headline was Luis Suárez scoring 31 goals and grabbing himself the golden boot in the Premier League, whilst also stealing every single individual trophy in the season that you could think of. And this carry job wasn't just those 31 goals, it was everything. Every game that you went into, if Luis Suárez was on your side, and you were one of these Liverpool players, you just felt safe. Not because he wasn't going to bite you because you weren't on the same team as him, but because he was coming at the opposition with vengeance, a ferocious tenacity to just, press the defense, get the ball from the front. He could even, go from front to back, dribbling at the defense. He could do link-up play. He could cross it in from the right-hand side and get an assist. He could score from every angle. He could score from a free kick. He could score from a volley. He could put the ball through your legs and whip it into the top corner. It did not matter. This was honestly the best version of an all-out striker. An all-out complete forward, an advanced forward, a forward that can do it all. That was Luis Suárez in the 2013/14 season. There was not one thing that he couldn't do. And I think people always mention this, but going into this season, he would, start it by missing a bunch of games because of a ban that he previously had. This is also that same season where he would score like 4 goals against Norwich that had 3 of the best finishes that you will ever see in your entire life, including a 40-yard volley, another goal where he would flick it over a defender and just whip it into the goal on the half volley. There was just too many variations of world-class finishes to even imagine. And this was a striker that was carrying forward the Liverpool side whilst we were in an era where strikers were so prominent. Like, if you took Luis Suárez out of this Liverpool side during this era, they would never have got that far, or that close to winning a Premier League with all of the rest of the players. Despite them still having an amazing team during this time, Suárez was just such a level ahead over everyone that it was clear to see, earning that move to Barcelona and just continuing to be a menace in all competitions. That season, the 2013/14 season from Luis Suárez, was the purest form of a forward that I have ever personally witnessed. And for me, that was one of the biggest carry jobs that, again, I have seen. We briefly have to talk about Didier Drogba, because this is a guy that was not only clutch in club competitions, scoring in final after final, but also a man that helped stop a war. Yes, the Ivorian striker had aura on the pitch and off it. And not in the silly sense that, Didier Drogba had a ponytail and just looked cool. No, this guy had real aura, where he would walk into a country, his home nation, and stop a war. Back in 2005, after helping lead Ivory Coast to World Cup qualification, he would make a post-match plea on live television. And with an entire nation watching, Drogba would talk to the masses, begging Ivorian countrymen to lay down their arms and end a civil war that was ongoing in Ivory Coast. He laid out his intentions and emotions on a digital canvas, and the entire nation heard him, with this incredible speech eventually leading to a ceasefire after 5 years of conflict. Like, this is real aura, some superhero type impact on an entire nation. Only Drogba can claim to have this. And with this happening back in 2005, Drogba's stocks would just keep on rising, and he would get better and better season after season, slowly becoming an icon in football history. He would build a reputation as being a striker that turned up for the big occasions. scoring 12 goals in 17 finals he appeared in for Chelsea whilst winning 11 trophies. And though he's often overlooked in the grander scale of the best strikers of all time, I think personally there hasn't been an archetype since the departure of Drogba from the game. In terms of his brute strength and power, no one comes close. The mentality to top it off, but also the clutch ability to finish off in the moments when no other player rises. Drogba had it all. Let's talk about a player that became a cult hero at two different Serie A clubs. And his name is Krzysztof Piątek, with his rise almost replicating, the anatomy of a firework. A brief but spectacular spell at the top. Now, he arrived in Genoa from Cracovia for around 4 million euros back in 2018. And with nobody but people from Poland knowing him, he then just exploded onto the scene. And in the first half of the 2018/19 season, he would go on an incredible run of form, scoring 19 goals in 21 appearances for Genoa, whilst also scoring in his first 7 Serie A games, something only the likes of Batistuta, aka Batigol, had done before. And by January, AC Milan just couldn't resist. They had their hands rubbing together. They couldn't wait to get their greasy paws on Krzysztof Piątek because he was going to have immediate impact. And somehow this gamble worked. They would pay 35 million euros for Piątek, just after Genoa had paid 4, and he would then score 9 Serie A goals in 14 games. And I don't even think I really did it justice just with this recording, because on his Genoa debut against Lecce in the Coppa Italia, this guy scored 4 goals and completed a hat-trick in the first 20 minutes of the game. And then on his Serie A debut, he would go on to score in the 6th minute to help Genoa to a 2-1 victory over Empoli. Again, just demonstrating that this guy was an instant success and an icon during the season, with him honestly being so iconic for the goals that he scored, but also the celebration that came along with it, the gun fingers, pap pap. And unfortunately for him and everyone that was watching him during this time, this form suddenly just faded away, fizzling out as he bounced from team to team, from Hertha Berlin to Fiorentina. And it's honestly a shame, because during that spell he would finish as Serie A's 3rd highest goal scorer with 22 league goals that campaign, one ahead of Cristiano Ronaldo. Milan fans all thought that he was going to be the one, because the following season he was given the number 9, but eventually they would have to go and find another striker, which they eventually brought in Zlatan Ibrahimović to man and fix their goal scoring problems during 2020. He would go down as a cult hero for both Milan and Genoa, and again, his impact will never be forgotten despite his career having a downward trajectory since. And from one striker that popped into the scene, did his thing and just left, to another that became some sort of a journeyman before peaking at the highest level. Now, Joselu is the definition of persistence in football, because for most of this guy's career, he was a journeyman striker. The guys that just move from team to team year in and year out. Even at one point, I had him in my career mode with Sunderland. Bro, tell me why he's signing for my Sunderland team. We win the championship and he's just signing for me as a free agent, and he's coming in and he's bagging 38 goals in the season. He spent a lot of his career just jumping from team to team trying to find a home. Whether it was Hoffenheim, Stoke, Newcastle, Alaves, Espanyol, he was always considered respectable but just never elite. And then came the 23/24 season, because at 33 years of age, Real Madrid would sign Joselu. And this guy was just supposed to be a squad filler, just make up the numbers, make it look like we had some depth in this team. But no, he became a Champions League hero, because back in the 2023/24 Champions League semi-final, it would be Joselu that made the difference. Coming off the bench for Real Madrid against Bayern Munich and scoring 2 goals. 2 goals in 3 minutes that would send Real Madrid to a final and cause absolute chaos in the Bernabeu, but also cement Joselu as an absolute cult hero for the Real Madrid fans. He would end the season with 17 goals in all competitions, coming off the bench and popping in and scoring here and there. But honestly, it would be this moment that would be talked about by the Madristas. And now when you think of the name Joselu, you don't remember him for his time at Stoke City. You remember him for that iconic moment in the Champions League, which is also similar to the next guy that we need to talk about, because this next guy did everything that Joselu did, but even more. Now, Origi might be the gold platinum standard for cult heroes in football. This guy honestly completed it all, whether it was last minute goals in the Premier League or impacting in the Champions League against the biggest teams. He had an impact in all these aspects. Never really being relied on in the starting 11 week in and week out, he would pop in and be clutch and then leave. Always behind the likes of Salah, Firmino and Mane, Origi loomed in the shadows. Something like a phantom sixth man like Kuruko from Kuruko's Basketball. He was never really shunned the light on. But when the flashing lights came, he did rise to the occasion. And when Jurgen Klopp reached out his hand and said, "Divock, I need you," Origi stood tall, like a warrior. "Put me in there, coach." And one great example of this would be the 2019 Champions League semi-final between Liverpool and Barcelona. This was the second game after Barcelona had absolutely destroyed Liverpool at home 3-0 with Messi scoring a free kick, Suárez scoring in the game. They were looking like they were gonna party at Anfield. Party, party, party. Hell no. Cut the music. There was no party that was about to happen. And in this return fixture at Anfield, Divock Origi would score 2 goals against Barcelona in a semi-final. Bro, people would dream of this, including the legendary corner taken quickly by Trent Alexander-Arnold. Who did he cross the ball into? Who was first to react? It was Divock Origi. Yeah, he wasn't sleeping. He was alive. And even in the Champions League final that year, he would score the second goal in the game, sealing the win. And over his Liverpool career of over 170 games, he would only score 41 goals, but a lot of them would be some of the most impactful goals that we would ever see. Origi was the man, and honestly one of my favorite cult heroes in football history. Now let's talk about someone a bit different. Not really a cult hero for any specific team, but a hero for his national team. Let's talk about James Rodríguez. James. This guy is a national treasure for Colombia. Ever since that 2014 World Cup run, he has had the streets, winning the Golden Boot with 6 goals in the competition that year, including that volley he scored against Uruguay, which won goal of the tournament, carrying Colombia to their first ever World Cup quarter-final. And since then, his club career has been a bit patchy here and there, with spells at the likes of Real Madrid, a fall-off spell at the likes of Everton under Ancelotti as well. But whenever he pulls on that Colombia shirt, it's like Superman when he puts on his suit. When you see that yellow on his chest, this guy just turns into something completely different, a new animal, like a wolf. And this was honestly perfectly demonstrated at Copa America back in 2024, captaining Colombia all the way to the final and nearly winning it all, whilst also providing 6 assists throughout the entire tournament, more than any other player at 33 years of age. He's for me the perfect cult hero for a nation because he's always been there for Colombia when they needed him, and even in friendlies you see his impact. He is the guy. Let's talk about one of Serie A's ultimate cult heroes, Antonio Di Natale. This guy would spend almost his entire career at Udinese, rejecting bigger clubs to stay loyal, and with him accumulating 209 goals, putting him 6th in the all-time ranks on Serie A's top goal scorers, that just clearly demonstrates his impact on the Serie A during his time there. But it was between 2009 and 2011 where he really took the league by storm, winning top goal scorer twice, hitting 29 goals in the 2009/10 season, then 28 goals in the 2010/11 season. And even at 36 years of age, he was still hitting double figures each and every season without anyone really knowing who this guy was. I'm telling you, if you watch the reels back, watch the clips, this guy had the technical brilliance that you would associate with some of the best in the world, yet nobody really knew who this guy was apart from his FIFA card. Tell me you're not an OG if you don't remember Di Natale's FIFA cards back in the day. Fans loved him and he became a cult hero because of his love for Udinese. When he could have left for the likes of Milan, Juve and Roma, he stood still, becoming a legend and cult hero, but also a guy that a lot of neutrals don't know a lot about. And I think the first guy we have to talk about is Karim Benzema from 2021 to 2022. Now, Benzema's campaign during the Champions League back in 2021 was nothing but spectacular, and honestly goes down as one of the finest in the tournament's history. He was finally the vital key man up top for Real Madrid, and he thrived in his role. And one competition that he absolutely dominated that season was the Champions League. During this entire campaign, Benzema got 44 goals in all competitions, with 27 in the La Liga and 15 in the Champions League, whilst also creating over 60 goal scoring opportunities whilst being the striker. That season he showed traits that we had never really seen before in his game, with a lot of his impact not only coming in the 18-yard box but in the build-up play of attacks. And I think what stands out to most of us when looking at Benzema during this year is the teams that he put up 10 out of 10 performances against. A hat-trick against PSG in the round of 16, and match-winning games against the likes of Man City and Chelsea, where he scored 4 in the 2 legs. Many people thought that this run of form was only going to last during the group stage, where this guy was bagging goals against the likes of Shakhtar Donetsk. But no, when them elimination rounds came, Benzema stepped up. Playoff Benzema. And with that tape on his hand, he led his team to the very end and put himself at the pinnacle of football, with this campaign eventually winning him a Ballon d'Or. Now the next player on this list is a funny one, because I don't think a lot of people really give him the flowers that he deserves. So let's pick some flowers out of this flower bed and give them to Francesco Totti. Now this is a man of morals who went on a generational run during his entire career. Francesco Totti at one point was one of the best players in the world and arguably Ballon d'Or level. And I think him staying by the side of Roma for so long actually put his legacy in a bit of a rut, because during the early 2000s there were murmurs of him being a guy that Real Madrid wanted. During a time where Real Madrid signed the likes of Luis Figo, Zidane, Francesco Totti was another guy that was in the rumour mill. This guy started off as an attacking midfielder, and it was actually Spalletti in 2005/6 that converted him to a false 9. And this was a position that he would go on to dominate the Serie A with. And that season, through moving positions, he got 15 goals and 9 assists in 24 games. And Totti that season could have had even more of an impact, but he actually got injured. And this injury would linger into the 2006 World Cup. But still, on limited minutes, this guy contributed, playing a key role in Italy's World Cup win and also providing 4 assists, being the joint top assister. And then he followed up that season by winning the European Golden Boot, scoring 26 goals in the league and outperforming the likes of Drogba and Ronaldinho. And through this long career of loyalty, he amassed 250 goals for one club. Francesco Totti's generational run, in my opinion, stemmed through the back end of his career, standing the test of time and contributing so much to AS Roma. Now, from a loyal Italian striker to arguably the best Premier League player of all time, we have to talk about Thierry Henry during the 2002/3 season. In a season during prime Premier League years, Henry put up 24 goals and 20 assists in the league. During the season, Henry led Arsenal all the way to the end, but it came with a lackluster finish, with Arsenal bottling the league. Nobody since has recorded 20 assists in a season, let alone get 24 goals too. And even watching some of the assists back during that season, they weren't no shabby assists. They weren't no just give it to him and he's running past 4 players. They were setups. This guy was truly an advanced forward in that attacking line. He wasn't just a striker. He wasn't just a centre forward. He was everything. Another generational run that we have to talk about is from a snake. Robin van Persie during the 2011-12 season was insane. He had one of the most phenomenal final seasons of a player I've ever seen. And I was there. As an Arsenal fan, I witnessed this. This guy slapped 30 Premier League goals during that season for Arsenal, achieving the Golden Boot while getting no titles that year, only helping Arsenal to secure a Champions League spot. During this season, you saw him hit all these different shots, his iconic volleys being just the tip of the iceberg. Robin van Persie was iconic. And then through making this amazing legacy at Arsenal, we thought next season, let's make a dive for the league. If Van Persie's going to keep up this form, we got to keep going. And then we find out he's moved to Old Trafford. As an Arsenal fan, I was broken. I was on my knees. You look back at that season and see how he replicated that exact run of form for Arsenal to Man United, becoming one of the main guys, you know, Batman being Rooney, Robin being Van Persie. they took over the league. And for these 2 seasons, I think Van Persie was the best player in the entire league. And first off, we head to Milan, a place known for its fashion, but also an area where Zlatan Ibrahimović came, saw and conquered. Now during this time, AC Milan was seen as a fallen giant, never really replicating their peak years throughout the 2010s and 2020s, whilst also enduring a Champions League absence in the 2013/14 season. They would also finish as low as 10th during this period in their club's history, but it was one man that showed up and kind of changed everything. Because in January 2020, Milan were just straight off the back of a 5-0 defeat to Atalanta. And that's when the higher ups said, nah, we need backup, call in Zlatan. And at 38 years of age, Zlatan Ibrahimović returned to AC Milan, bringing this leadership and belief that this squad needed during this time. And that's when we saw his generational run begin. Zlatan would make immediate impact from the half season of being at this club, scoring 10 goals in 18 league appearances, lifting Milan from mid-table mediocrity to a 6th place finish and a Europa League qualification. And then in the following campaign, the 20-21 season, he would continue this run of form, scoring 15 goals in 19 games. And thanks to his contributions again, Milan would finish in an even better position this season, reaching second and their best placing season in nearly a decade, whilst also helping this side reach the Champions League for the first time in 7 years. Then the 2021/22 season comes around and Zlatan says, I ain't going anywhere. This season we saw Zlatan's role evolve because of his injuries at the time, scoring 8 league goals as his minutes were managed throughout the entire campaign. Yet it was his influence that still remained immense and helped the entire team, because Milan's young stars would absorb this aura that Zlatan was presenting to them and would lead AC Milan to their first Scudetto in how many years? 11 years to be exact since their last one. Zlatan had had a big influence and impact on this run, mentally guiding a lot of these young players during these times and combining with Giroud this season for over 40% of AC Milan's goals. And it wasn't just like it was fans that saw his impact, it was the young players too that were playing for Milan's side during this time. The likes of Rafael Leao, Theo Hernandez and Sandro Tonali all giving praise to Zlatan during this season and his tenure at this club. And this was such a weird spell in time because Zlatan was already an icon at AC Milan for his spell before he moved to PSG. But he returned to this great club and did what he couldn't do all them years ago, taking Milan going through a downward spiral and picking them up. Something like Askeladd did to Thorfinn in Vinland Saga, picking up this young child and taking him on the back and saying, you're coming on this journey with me to the very end. But in terms of another individual that actually stood out in the Serie A itself and not the Champions League, we have to talk about one of the most hated strikers in online football discourse, Gonzalo Higuaín, aka Burgerhin. Yeah, editor, you gotta cut that out. Managed by Maurizio Sarri, he was injected into this Napoli side, an Argentine striker that had arrived from Real Madrid back in 2013. And from 2013, Higuaín was a consistent scorer, but Napoli fans were looking for something more. They needed 30 plus. They wanted someone to replicate the brilliance of Diego Armando Maradona. And Higuaín at 28 said, hey, I am the chosen one. Hold my ice cream. Who knew that this guy would be the difference maker this campaign, going on an absolute historic run with 36 goals in 35 games, breaking a 66-year-old record for the most goals in the Italian league, a record that was held by Gunnar Nordahl back in the 1949/1950 season, where he scored 35 goals. And it was absolutely crazy. Higuaín week after week would score poacher goals, clinical finishes, one-on-ones. He was there whenever they needed him, helping Napoli battle neck to neck with Juventus, a side that would actually just dominate this entire era of the Serie A. It was Higuaín up top with the likes of Hamsik and Jorginho in the midfield. And although Napoli wouldn't reach the peak and win a Scudetto that season, he would help them finish second and also get back into the Champions League. And his 36 goals would nearly make him the highest in all of Europe's top 5 leagues, with the only other player ahead of him being Luis Suárez, who scored 40 that year. And I think one of my favourite things about him this year was that he rarely needed more than, 2-3 touches before he would shoot and score. And of course there's going to be a bunch of Napoli fans that remember his overhead kick against Frosinone. Happening on the final day of the season, Higuaín needed to break this record and he broke it in fine fashion, scoring a hat-trick in this game and also the overhead kick that I previously mentioned. And for context, this season individually puts him up there with some of the all-time Serie A greats. Guys like Ronaldo R9, Zlatan Ibrahimović, Marco van Basten and even Francesco Totti had never even reached 30 goals in this league. Yet Higuaín just came in with Napoli that season and said, nah, we're breaking all kinds of records. And it genuinely just never gets spoken about. And I think it's because at times during his career, he was elite. He was one of the best strikers throughout the 2010s at moments. And one of his moments came in a season for Napoli. And I think one great example of a pure striker during this time was Roy Makaay. In the 2002/03 season, he got 29 La Liga goals for Deportivo La Coruña. And this was 29 goals and no assists. His GA was just goals. Roy Makaay summed up pure efficiency. And if you go back and just look at some of his highlights, you will see that most of his finishes are with 2 or 3 touches maximum. Makaay was nicknamed the Phantom in Germany and was a Dutch striker known for his lethal finishing abilities. And I think the one thing that really stood out for him is his efficiency in front of goal. And during the early 2000s, he was one of the most feared strikers in the game. And literally, he only offered you goals. That's it. Because he didn't really contribute much in build-up play. He didn't really press the opposition too much, but he just showed up. Now, after moving to Deportivo from Vitesse, Roy Makaay made a name for himself in this Spanish side. And it was that 2002/03 season that he really broke out onto the scene with them 29 goals, winning the Pichichi as La Liga's top goal scorer and also averaging way below the amount of shots that other strikers in the league were averaging. And I think the most notable performance during his Deportivo spell was when he scored a hat-trick against Bayern Munich in the Champions League. And this eventually played a direct part into Bayern Munich saying, you know what, I think let's just take him. Where again, his impact was instant, scoring a goal every 123 minutes. And again, during his overall time at Bayern Munich, he was a revelation, being their main striker for multiple seasons and top goal scorer, helping them of course win the Bundesliga twice and also get a DFB Pokal. Now, although Roy Makaay kind of spearheaded this title as strikers during this time being so clinical, how many other strikers during this time were also doing similar things in different leagues? And I think another striker that perfectly exemplifies clinical finishing is Ruud van Nistelrooy, another Dutchman that played in the same era as Makaay. Now, Van Nistelrooy often gets overlooked when it comes to strikers in the Premier League, but during his time at Man United, this was a bagsman. He was the ultimate predator of the penalty box. He was the ultimate predator of the penalty box. And in the 2002/03 season, he scored 25 league goals. And this wasn't no small striker that was hiding behind defenders and popping up in the box. This was a beast, a physical presence, but also the ability to anticipate movements and get in behind when they needed him. Again, demonstrating that he wasn't always involved in the build-up play. He was just there as the fulcrum in the attack. The next season for Man United, in the 2003/04 season, he again got 30 goals in all competitions, whilst also making an impact in the Champions League. And even when he made the move to the Bernabeu in 2006, he continued that form that he had at Man United. In the 2006/07 season, he scored 25 goals in La Liga, winning the Pichichi aka La Liga's top goal scorer award and also helping Real Madrid win the league that season too. And I think these things I'm going to tell you about Van Nistelrooy are really going to put in your mind how good of a player he was during this time, especially how good of a striker he was. With a Premier League Golden Boot in the 2002/03 season, La Liga Golden Boot in the 2006/07 season. He was also the top goal scorer in the Champions League in 2001/02, in 2002/03, and in 2004/05. And I think you start to see a common pattern when talking about these freaks of nature when it came to strikers during this time. With pretty much all of the main strikers during this time having that trait of being able to poach the ball in the box. Because not only did Roy Makaay play in this era, Van Nistelrooy play in this era, but the likes of Filippo Inzaghi, a striker again who almost exclusively operated inside, the 18-yard box. A Champions League winner and just a baller for AC Milan and Juventus. Then you had the likes of Gabriel Batistuta, aka Batigol. Batigol! Batistuta was an Argentine legend of the game. This guy was a prolific goal scorer that had a mixture of physicality and on-the-ball skill. And he is known as one of the greatest strikers from the 1990s and the 2000s. Batistuta was a goal scorer. In 94/95, he got 26 goals for Fiorentina, scoring in 11 consecutive matches that season. Then in the 98/99 season, he scored 21 goals in just 28 games, playing a crucial role in Fiorentina's title challenge that season. And again, this was him progressing with Fiorentina. He kind of stayed there from when they were relegated and brought them all the way up. And then even when he moved to AS Roma during the 2000s, he still replicated the goal scoring ability that he had back then, helping Roma in their historic season winning Serie A in the 2000s. But this guy was not only influential for his club, he was influential for Argentina on the international stage, helping them win Copa America back in 1991 with his 6 goals. And then in 95, he helped them again. They didn't win that year, but still, he got goals in that competition. Now, the top scorers in football today are the likes of Harry Kane and Erling Haaland. These guys that completely obliterate the strikers that I mentioned in this video when you talk about just the number game. But these strikers are just outliers in an era that strikers are kind of fading away, as teams are slowly but surely using strikers less, with only few having a claim to be called world class. And I think it's an incredible contrast when looking back at this time where strikers, again, were freaks of nature. Because the list of strikers that you can talk about that played during the 90s and early 2000s absolutely topple over strikers in football that are playing today. You had the English bagsman himself, Alan Shearer, that was playing again during the 90s and late 90s. You also had the likes of Hernan Crespo, scoring 26 goals for the likes of Lazio. And this guy was a freak of nature. He had the athletic ability to just out-jump defenders. If you see some of his goals, it looks like he could just be taken and put into the modern game. You also had someone like Christian Vieri, aka Bobo, who again showed dominance during his peak years. And I haven't even talked about the likes of R9, George Weah and Thierry Henry, who all, their careers spanned during this time, the 90s and the early 2000s. R9, when he first came about, was the guy. From PSV to Barcelona to Inter Milan, wherever he went, goals followed. And this wasn't just during his club time too. It was when he went to Brazil. He was literally winning them the World Cup by himself. In his 96/97 season for Barcelona, he got 34 goals in 37 games. And if you want to dive even further into just this poaching ability that strikers during this era had, look at Raúl, with over 200 goals whilst playing in La Liga for Real Madrid. Before all the superstars joined, Raúl was the guy. And if you're still not convinced, during this same era, we had Shevchenko, who went on to win a Ballon d'Or. We had Trezeguet, who, helped France internationally. Now, strikers are not dead, but people need to really understand, and I've said this before, that football goes through transitional periods where tactics change, players change, systems change, things slowly but surely turn from new things to old things, just like strikers have. The strikers we grew up on that were in their primes are at the tailgates of their career now. So the new batch of strikers are coming in and, they're just not going to just appear right in front of us and become world class. They need time to brew like a good cup of tea. And when that good cup of tea brews to its finest color, then we will see the world class strikers taking the center stage. Because let's not forget that a certain man just strolled up into the Premier League, the best league in the entire world, and broke the record for the amount of goals that you could score in a single season. This brother scored 52 goals in all competitions in his first full season with Manchester City, and you're making videos about how there's no world-class strikers. You are living and breathing in a time where a world-class striker is being made. And of course, Haaland is not the only world-class striker in football right now. There is a bunch that are literally there or near being world-class right now. Let's not forget the likes of Darwin Núñez, that is slowly but surely becoming a very reliable striker in the Premier League and someone that can definitely become world-class with time. Time and time again he misses chances, but time and time again he is clearly scoring goals and helping Liverpool. There's the likes of Lautaro Martínez, Osimhen, Endrick, Victor Roque, Haaland, Sesko, Olivier Watkini, Victor Gyökeres, and of course Harry Kane is having one of the best individual seasons that he's ever had. Even though Bayern Munich are kind of slumped, they're going through this spell where they're losing a lot, who is shining? Who is scoring week in and week out and carrying another team? Harry Kane. Right now, as I'm making this video, he has 38 goals in 37 appearances in all comps. Let me just take a breather. Like, I genuinely need to just take a break from life after hearing some of these stats. How are you telling me and you're making videos saying there's no world-class strikers when Harry Kane exists? No. Like, if I was to just change his name to Harry Cariano, then people are definitely talking about Harry Cariano. But because it's Harry Kane from England, people don't really care. It's like the likes of Alan Shearer back in the day. No one was pitching that he was the best striker in the world at any point in his career. But Alan Shearer was a bagsman. And if you're like myself, a Premier League wizard, a Premier League merchant, a Premier League gremlin that only watches the Premier League, you will know from an outlooker looking in, just watching like match of the day every week, it looks like right now that there are many teams in this league that have an adaptable striker in their side. Ivan Toney, Gabriel Jesus, Haaland, Isak, Olivier Watkini, Solanke, Cunha, Hwang Hee-chan. For me personally, it's so weird. We have all these fringe strikers that in 5 years could be doing something completely different in their career. All it takes is one transfer move to a big side in Serie A or a big La Liga side, and these careers could just take off. Like if Ivan Toney was to make the right choice next season and move to a bigger club, maybe in Europe, he could become a world-class striker in 3 years. Now let's take a step back into the 2010s, which was a golden era for strikers. We had bundles of bagsmen that set the benchmark for the strikers that we have today. During the last decade, we can see that the average goals per game was 0.75. In the top 5 leagues in Europe, strikers were scoring at a 0.75 average chance. That means they were scoring every 3 in 4 chances that they got. But after the last few seasons, that exact stat has gone down to 0.60, a clear decline in the position of the striker's effectiveness. Now, one major reason for this decline is the overall evolution of modern football tactics. The likes of Pep Guardiola and Jurgen Klopp popularized the tactic of a high pressing game where a team's defense actually starts from the front of the pitch, which therefore has increased the workload on strikers, making them over time less focused on purely scoring goals. Now, the role of a striker has also evolved. Strikers today are just expected to be more versatile. They're not just goal poachers anymore. They need to assist, they need to trap back, and they need to create space for their teammates with diversion runs. All these new functions has diluted their sole objective, which was to score goals. And in my previous video on this topic, I did discuss this, highlighting how modern strikers have to drop into deep pockets on the pitch to pick up the ball and help their teammates, which wasn't common about a decade ago. Right now in the comments below, name me a striker that you can confidently say is world class. A complete striker, a guy that is going to get you a goal no matter whether you're losing, drawing or winning. Instantly people will say the likes of Harry Kane, Haaland, Osimhen, Lautaro Martínez, Gyökeres, Sesko, Olivier Watkini. But none of these except Kane could even touch the greatness that was the strikers of the previous decade. The likes of Suárez, Van Persie, Cavani, Fernando Torres, David Villa, Samuel Eto'o, Ibrahimović, Lewandowski, Benzema. But it's just not fair to compare the new strikers to the ones of old. Because let's just take a striker that played in both of these eras. A striker that was not only a pioneer of the 2010s, but is also still playing to this day. Robert Lewandowski is a striker that most football fans seem to forget. But after 557 goals in 756 games, I think you shouldn't really be forgetting his name. But even while being a prolific striker in both eras, his goal scoring rate has dropped. And even though it's a slight drop and he still performs exceptionally, it just goes to show that if one of the best strikers of the previous decade's goal rate is dipping because of new systems, then all strikers in the entire era are going to dip as well. Lewandowski's slight dip in goal scoring rate mirrors the entire era and the overall trend that strikers are getting worse, and this is because of the new methods of play. And in conclusion, I think that the top comment of my last video pretty much sums up the entire topic to a T. Now, yesterday I posed a question on my community tab asking you guys to name me your favorite strikers from the 2010 era and why. Mainly because my whole argument in the video that you're watching right now is that the old strikers of the 2010 era are way better than the ones we have today. Now, Mr. RVQTXR, and if I say that correctly, Tuxverdu, has said that Drogba was a beast at the time. He carried Chelsea to UCL finals and won them one as well. What an absolute legend. Now, I can completely agree with this comment. Drogba was one of my favourite strikers of the 2010 era, and he was just a beast in general. But in terms of his goal to game ratio, he has one of the lowest in terms of the top 50 strikers during this era. But what I can say is Drogba was a very, very clutch player, so what a shout from you. Fabrizio says Diego Costa and slaps a bear emoji because this guy was an absolute beast. I remember watching Diego Costa in that Chelsea side, that one season where Fabregas was in that Chelsea side and he was putting up balls, you know, up to the top of the pitch to Diego Costa. Diego Costa was holding off his man, spinning him and just finishing in the back of the net. I have never seen an archetype of striker like that in the Premier League since, and a unique build of striker, not even having too much pace, having that strength and ability to just turn his man marker and finish opportunities time and time again. Ronaldo Nazario Football says that Lewandowski was really, really good. His highlights are just unbelievable, and I'm surprised less people mentioned him here. I didn't even see this comment before obviously editing this video, but Lewandowski was one of the main pointers in why I made it. An unsung hero in terms of strikers in world football, and I think he needs way more recognition. It's just stupid that when he comes up in these arguments of who are the best strikers in, you know, football of all time, he never really gets respect on his name just because he did it for the majority of his time in the Bundesliga. But clearly the Bundesliga is a league that we should be respecting, because in the last 10 years, how many times have teams from the Bundesliga made it to the Champions League final? Now, Dylan Addison says Bas Dost, and this is a guy that I remember vividly from FIFA. Now, Marley Bashaj 1069 says everybody mentioned Suárez, Ibra, Cavani, etc. But nobody, not even most Barcelona or Atletico fans, mentioned David Villa. He wasn't really a typical number 9, usually playing down the left at Barcelona, while Messi played down the middle. But oh man, was he a beast. Leagues, UCL, Euros, World Cup, he won everything while playing a major role. And if he had played in a different era with different teams, not overshadowed by Messi, Xavi, Iniesta, Torres, etc., he would be considered a top 15 striker of all time without a doubt. Now, this is a comment that I can absolutely. Ron2K2 is another guy that talks about Lewandowski, saying for sure his flair, precision, and the fact that you could rely on him in a clutch game whenever it's needed was just beautiful, and his consistency even till this day is no joke at all. Even though my argument in this video is that Lewandowski, you know, his numbers has slowly dropped off, bro has still got something like 53 goals since starting for Barcelona. That is an amazing rate. So even though he has declined a bit because of the systems and tactical shifts, he's still Lewandowski. This guy will score wherever he goes. Dave Roy says that Suárez was one of, if not the best strikers in this era. He had a sublime finishing rate, link-up play, and was a workhorse who would do anything for the team. And I personally think he is the best striker of the 2010 era of football and would have won 1 or 2 Ballon d'Or had it not been for the 2 greatest players playing at the same time as him. Now, Mick says, crazy no one mentioned El Tigre himself. Falcao was an absolute monster and had everything. Now, Falcao had it all, and his build was just one of my favourites, being agile on the feet but strong enough to hold off his man, but also being a guy that likes to utilise my favourite finish in the game. The chip shot was one of his, timely finishes that he would use time and time again. And I think his performance against Man City in the Champions League that one season when he was playing for Monaco sums him up perfectly. So yeah, in this upcoming Premier League season, I am predicting that Erling Haaland goes crazy. A guy that will consistently bag you goals no matter how he's performing. A lot of people seem to shun him because he's not an all-round footballer. But look at the likes of Inzaghi in the past, who have also excelled in his position, scoring over 300 goals in his career whilst having no skills whatsoever other than the ability to beat the offside trap. Arguably one of the most exciting young players in football right now. Consistently, he is getting disrespected. And for me, it's so baffling because look at Kylian Mbappe, the rival to Erling Haaland. Man had an absolute stinker in the Euros, got a move to Real Madrid, and now all the faith is being restored. Bro, I know that Erling Haaland's international career isn't the best, but come on, put Erling Haaland in that France team and this guy's bagging goals. Erling Haaland last season, even though he was lackluster, still put up 35 goals in 37 games in all competitions. And I think he's just conditioned Premier League fans to think that his scoring rates are just normal. It's like growing up and your family forcing you to watch horror movies from the age of 8. By the time you're 16, you're watching every horror movie and you're not getting scared. That's what we're experiencing with Erling Haaland's goal scoring ability. This guy is scoring goals game after game, but still, we're not really impressed. And fans are just eager to see him fail. Go 1 game without scoring, go 4 games without scoring, and we are gassed. What does that say about modern football fans? I don't know, you tell me. You guys are trying to rush the potential of our young future. And honestly, the disrespect on the current era of strikers has to be stopped. Let's bring up Victor Osimhen, who's another striker with some world-class potential. You look at his attributes and tell me that he wouldn't perform in the Premier League, and you're just stupid. Blistering pace, a deceiving physical build, and the ability to just be in the right place at the right time. This guy is guaranteed to score goals in any league he goes to. But because people have not seen 90 minutes of him play and will not just go about on some random site and watch 90 minutes of Osimhen play, they will never really rate him as a striker. Another key man in the Serie A is Lautaro Martínez, and even though in between a couple stinky World Cup performances, this guy has scored goals for Inter Milan. He has been an immovable piece in that Inter Milan side and has been crucial to them season after season. And even though they went through a bit of turmoil, Lautaro Martínez again guarantees you some sort of creation, some sort of goals and contribution. When paired up with the likes of Lukaku, he was successful. When paired up with the likes of Marcus Thuram, again, he was successful, but nobody really looks at him. With 23 goals and 10 assists in the Serie A last season, these stats are undeniable. And just because 15 years ago, the same Argentine strikers that were in the Serie A were so much better, it doesn't mean we should downplay what he's doing for Inter Milan. But again, we got to come to terms with the fact that football has changed. We got these strikers that are not only creating, they're dropping back, they're scoring goals. Crespo was not doing that. Batistuta was not doing that. And there's also a bunch of strikers in the Bundesliga with potential that we seem to be rushing. Victor Boniface only just broke out into the scene last season for Bayern Leverkusen. He was a part of the side that lost 1 game in the entire season. Their target man. I'm telling you, Boniface could be the real deal, but give him time. I also made a whole video about Serhou Guirassy last season, competing with Harry Kane for getting the top goal scorer. He's now made a move to Borussia Dortmund, and let's see if he can replicate the performances that he had last season. Nicholas Füllkrug has just moved from Borussia Dortmund to West Ham, which is such a strange move, but again, he performed really well at the Euros and was vital for Borussia Dortmund's challenge for the Champions League last season. Now, the evolution of tactics has led to a broader distribution when it comes to goals in football. The emphasis on fluid attacking play and versatile forwards has skewed the role of a traditional striker. So all of these newer gen strikers that have all these bundles of potential cannot be rushed because they are also developing in this new way of playing that we are witnessing. And I know it's so annoying because we've still got strikers from the last generation who were so good that are still putting up really solid numbers. Harry Kane topping the Bundesliga for the most goals last season. But what have his goals attributed to in his side's success? That is the difference between Harry Kane and modern strikers right now. He's not able to keep up with the pace that we're seeing football being played at right now. Personally, I think Isak should be a striker that needs to make a move elsewhere. elsewhere. I want to see him flourish in a team that I know can guarantee him a trophy or that next step up. He has the potential to be up there, neck and neck with Haaland for, we can go goal for goal, yeah? We can go GA for GA this season. He's got that potential, but when you're surrounding him with some losers in that Newcastle side, dry boys, yeah, guys that just kick at people for no reason, Almiron, that's looking like a chipmunk. Bro, bring Isak to Arsenal. Some of his goals are just incredible to watch. His performance against Tottenham, putting Van der Berg or Van der... I don't even know what that brother's name. He put him on his bum, slumped. Again and again, this guy, when he has not got an injury, he's not got anything lingering, and he decides to play, he turns up. This is the Somali Thierry Henry. We need him. And it all starts with an elder statesman in terms of strikers in football. Robert Lewandowski. This striker is like Shanks from One Piece because it doesn't matter what era he is playing in, he is going to score goals and show up in the big occasions. At 36 years old, Robert Lewandowski is the top goal scorer in not only the La Liga, but also the Champions League too. He sits at the top of the scorers table with 16 goals. This is a guy that is clearly demonstrating that class is permanent. Ask an Arsenal fan right now, would they take a 36-year-old Robert Lewandowski? Of course we would. I would actually beg on my knees for Robert Lewandowski to walk through the doors of the Emirates. And to me this is crazy. At the age of 36, Lewandowski is bagging goals for a club that is actually competing in all competitions. And comparing him to strikers of the past, you know, at this age, at 36, certain strikers were doing farewell tours. And Lewandowski's not just scoring charity goals, he's turning up in the big games. Scoring twice against Real Madrid the first time he faced them, and then once again just the other day in the Supercopa. And of course he would go on to bag against Bayern Munich in the Champions League when he revisited his former side. And I think whilst we're on this topic of older strikers balling out right now, I think it's hard not to mention Chris Wood, because Chris Wood is now 33 years old and is terrorising the Premier League. He is in exceptional form for Nottingham Forest in the Premier League this season, and as of making this video he scored 12 goals in 20 games. And just the other day against Liverpool he scored a brilliant goal, finishing off this bit of transitional play that Nottingham Forest executed against that Liverpool side. And this is a guy that is actually exceeding his expected goals this season with 7.2. The guy scored 12. And his performances haven't been going under the radar because back in October he actually won the Premier League Player of the Month, making him the first Nottingham Forest player and New Zealander to receive the honour. Chris Wood's contributions have been instrumental in what Nottingham Forest have created this season, because having this big guy up top with all of these flary speedsters in behind him is just a bit of magic, and it's a bit of football heritage if you ask me. Every time I sit back and watch Nottingham Forest play, it actually gives me this sense of nostalgia, because the defenders just defend, the midfielders are creative but also, you know, strong in the tackle, the wingers are real wingers that take on opposition, and Chris Wood is the archetypal 2000 striker, the big man up top that can hold up the ball but is also clinical with one or two touches that lead to a goal. But it can't just be me that's been thinking this, but we've known that Chris Wood has been this underrated bagsman in the league for so long, and even just in the Championship too. Chris Wood was Leeds United's star striker from 2015 to 2017. And you might be asking, how do you even know this? Well, it's actually because I'm a big Mini Minter fan, Simon Minter. This guy used to talk about Chris Wood in his videos, so of course I'm going to know about Chris Wood. In the 2016/17 season, Chris Wood scored 27 goals in 44 appearances down in the Championship, winning himself a shiny golden boot which would ultimately spur him on to make a move elsewhere. During this time he was one of the deadliest strikers in the Championship, and Burnley saw this and said, you know what, we can utilise the Wood. So in 2017 they snapped him up for a club record fee of £15 million. And this is where the Chris Wood Premier League heritage began. Wood was a consistent goal scorer for Sean Dyche at Burnley, scoring 10 or more goals in 4 consecutive seasons. In the 2017/18 season he also played a pivotal role as Burnley finished 7th, securing Europa League qualification. And it's crazy because he was scoring consistently in a side that was so defensive. How on earth was he supposed to get opportunities? But when he did get them, he finished them off. And then in 2022, Newcastle signed him for 25 million so he could help them with their relegation battle. And although he did score some impactful goals for the club, he called it a day and made a move to Nottingham Forest. And I think right now in football, he is proving that you don't need to be this marquee striker signing to make an impact. Now, Alexander Isak has also been making waves in football at the moment, but his talent has been prevalent for years. Because even before his grandioso move to Newcastle, this guy was a prolific striker for Real Sociedad. And it wasn't just Newcastle that were interested in signing him, it was the likes of Arsenal and Chelsea too. He initially made the move to Newcastle and we saw signs of something special. But unfortunately, he would be labelled as inconsistent due to a bunch of injuries that happened during his early career at Newcastle. But this season, when he's been blessed to be fit and available, Alexander Isak has been showing the world that on his day, he is arguably one of the most well-rounded strikers in football. Isak has 15 goals and 4 assists in 22 games this season. And it's not just these numbers that are doing the talking, it's his on-field impact. Because every time I watch this guy play, I'm just only focused on him. He is dictating the game in so many ways, dropping deep to receive the ball, but also being on the end and finding pockets on either side of the pitch. This guy will pick up the ball on the right hand side, pick it up on the left and drive at your defense. And over the past weeks, his best skills have been on show against some of, the harder teams to beat in this league. Newcastle recently played Aston Villa, Man United, Spurs and Arsenal, and Alexander Isak scored in each and every one of those games, whilst also having an amazing impact. Because he wasn't scoring in losses, he scored in all of them games, and Newcastle also won every single one of them games. And I think the performance I'm quickly going to talk about is the one against Arsenal in the semi-final of the Carabao Cup. Because not only did Isak score the first goal, but he pretty much assisted the second, and then this guy was off by the 65th minute. I'm sitting there watching Arsenal struggle to break down Newcastle, and this guy is having a shower. That has to be a humiliation ritual for Arsenal fans. And by the looks of it, this form that he's on is not stopping anytime soon. Because the Swedish international, Eritrean Thierry Henry, is really that guy. Let's not be acting like this is not the best striker in the league right now. This is a striker that every big side in the world should be looking at. And if we're being honest, Newcastle should be looking to just bolster their attack. Because right now, they have Isak, they have Anthony Gordon, and if they were to get a world-class right winger, that could be an amazing trio. Now, we've spoken about one Swedish striker, but I think it's time to talk about the Swedish Hannibal Lecter, a guy that has been feasting on defenders for about 2 seasons now. He is proving every doubter wrong, and I am one of them. From lacing up his boots for Coventry City, he made a drastic change in his career to play for Sporting in Portugal. And since then, he has massively stepped up in every aspect of his game. And since joining Sporting CP in 2023, some of his stats have actually been unreal. In the 23/24 season, he scored 43 goals in 50 appearances. Then this season, as of making this video, he's got 32 goals in 30 appearances. These are the type of numbers you get when you buy, a world-class striker on career mode and you're playing on professional difficulty. Come on, man, get out of that league. Would he be able to replicate some of these stats in the Premier League, La Liga, Serie A, Ligue 1? Take away Ligue 1, yeah, take away Ligue 1. But even when watching this guy in the Champions League, he is the real deal. I remember a goal he scored a few months back against Lille. The ability to just turn a man and just finish off so seamlessly is something that not all strikers can do. And to be able to be this big, but this nimble on the feet to do that is something that, Premier League fans haven't seen before. He's not coming in with a skinny build like Alexander Isak. This is a guy that's built rivals Erling Haaland, but his game style is totally different. Averaging 1.93 progressive take-ons per 90 and over 10 progressive passes per 90 minutes too. I am dying to see this guy play for a big team in one of the top 5 leagues. This has to happen this summer, because I think then we will have a bunch of strikers that are really taking on the helm as being world class. And whilst we're on the topic of world class strikers, none other does it like Erling Haaland. Even though This guy has been on one of the worst runs of form in his entire career. He is still like the top goal scorer in the Premier League. And that's because he was so great at the start of this season. And now all of a sudden, he's been written off. Well, no. Here on the Jib Rules channel, we don't just write off players due to form. We actually appreciate everyone. This guy is a bagsman. In 21 games this season, he scored 16 goals and got 1 assist as well, equating to a goal every 1.3 matches. Haaland also set a record of scoring 75 goals in 77 games. A record that took Alan Shearer, the top goal scorer in the Premier League of all time, 93 games. And despite his inconsistencies throughout the start of this season, Haaland was still the top goal scorer in the entirety of 2024 in the Premier League, scoring 27 goals and highlighting his individual brilliance. But at the moment his side isn't playing the best, but it doesn't mean that we're just going to write off the impact of Erling Haaland. Now when looking at the Bundesliga, there seems to be a plethora of strikers that are, really doing their thing this season. From Sergio Guirassy, who is keeping up his form of last season but also replicating it in the Champions League, to Victor Boniface, who is taking more of a laid-back role in his Bayer Leverkusen side. And of course you still have Harry Kane, who is joint top goal scorer with 15 goals. And half of them, a billion of them, are penalties. So let's calm down. You also have Omar Mamouche, the Egyptian forward that is taking over the Bundesliga with 15 goals in the league. But, I've already made an entire video about him, and it looks like he's moving to Manchester City very soon. Jonathan Borghardt is another striker that seems to be making a rise to the top this season too, with 12 goals in the league so far. But in my opinion, it's Patrick Schick that is really doing the business this season. This is a guy who is ever present in that Bayer Leverkusen side, even when coming on from the bench. In just 13 appearances this season, he's got 11 goals, marking his impact in a side that he was never fully featured in. And I think what's making him such a standout striker in the league right now is his consistent ability to finish the ball in the back of the net, a skill that has been lost in modern football. If you have not a lot of touches in a game, as a striker, you need to take up your opportunities. And someone that is doing that is Patrick Schick, averaging 3.90 shots per 90 and putting him in the 99th percentile when it comes to non-penalty goals in football. This guy doesn't score from penalties, he just scores from open play. And I think another underlying stat from Patrick Schick's play is his touches in the attacking penalty area. He averages 7.80 touches per 90. That is amazing for a striker that is so clinical. He is showing up in the right places at the right time and touching the ball in the right area of the pitch, because you don't want your striker dropping in, to the center circle to touch the ball. Havertz, get off my screen. They are the same height. They should be able to play striker the same. They do not play striker the same. Now, whilst we're on the topic of strikers that would fill the hole in Arsenal's number 9 position, we have to talk about Victor Osimhen. Now, Osimhen recently started a new chapter for Galatasaray, and if we're being honest, football wants to see him shut that chapter and open up a new book in a different league. And that's because this striker is too good for this league. In just 13 appearances so far this season, he's got 10 goals and 3 assists in the league, with the top goal scorer having 13 goals in 18 games. That's 5 more games than Osimhen has played. And I think it's time that we finally see him, reminiscing the form that he had in that Napoli side that won the Serie A. Because his next move after Galatasaray is make or break. Whichever side he goes on to impact is going to be having a world-class striker at their disposal. A guy that creates 3.08 shot creating actions per 90. Also averaging 7.38 touches in the attacking penalty area per 90 as well. And if he can just find a side to play for that plays on the transition or plays the ball in behind, that is going to get the best out of Victor Osimhen and show again that he is a world-class striker in football. Now, the striker position in football is experiencing a resurgence like never before in the modern era. And it's not like I called this or anything, but you just have to be patient with these things. When you see promising strikers coming, into the horizon and showing themselves, instead of you batting them down and saying they're not world-class just yet, just sit back, and be patient because they're only going to get better. If you look at the likes of Matheus Cunha for Wolves this season, he's been amazing and had great individual displays. In 19 games this season, he scored 10 goals and provided 4 assists. But some of the goals that he scored, they're at the end of a progressive dribble. You've also got Jonathan David, who is pretty much Ligue 1's best striker right now. Moise Kean is also making a comeback for Fiorentina and again is finally scoring consistently with 11 goals and 2 assists this season. Dominic Solanke has also scored 7 goals and assisted 3 times for a Spurs side that is so inconsistent this season. And what about Liam Delap for Ipswich, who has scored 7 goals and provided 1 assist whilst playing for a team that just recently got promoted? He was not supposed to hit double figures this season, but he might just well do it. And the first striker that we have to talk about, and arguably the best during this time, is Luis Suárez. Now, Luis Suárez was feared on the pitch, not because of the ability that he had in his mouth to bite a shoulder, but because of his on-ball and off-ball ability. Widely considered one of the greatest strikers of all time, Suárez racked up over 500 career goals during his prime, winning 2 European Golden Shoes in 2014 and 2016. He remains the only player to win a Golden Boot in La Liga while Messi and Ronaldo were going through their prime years, just showing his impact on not only La Liga but football in general. This was a striker that had a powerful shot but a remarkable technical ability too, which we first really saw on display during his prime years at Liverpool. And it was at Liverpool where he would really start to dominate games, in 2014 ending the Premier League season with 31 goals, which would eventually prompt Barcelona to spend big money on the Uruguayan striker. And in Spain he would just replicate his form, being a part of a treble winning side in 2015 alongside the likes of Messi and Neymar. Leading La Liga during this time in both goals and assists, he showed that he was not just some background character, he was the guy that was making things happen as the striker. I'm telling you, in terms of an all-round forward that represents the 2010s so perfectly, no one really comes close to Suárez. Being able to drop in deep and just create a chance for himself, he showed signs of the peak strikers from the 2000s, the same ilk as the likes of R9 and Thierry Henry. These strikers that could just do it all and win a game by themselves. At times he was controversial and arguably someone that a lot of people hated, yet when it comes to just analysing his ability on a football pitch, you cannot deny that this guy is an all-timer. And alongside him, another striker that kind of led the 2010s is Robert Lewandowski, a Polish striker that is actually still thriving for one of the best teams in football right now, and in the season that we just finished, scored over 40 goals in all competitions. Yes, the longevity is insane. He turned goal scoring into an art form throughout his career, being eventually dubbed Lewandowski by not only Thomas Müller but by a lot of football fans. And it's weird because we saw him go from a raw prospect at Dortmund to being the best striker in world football and dominating the Bundesliga for years with Bayern Munich. He tallied 309 club goals during the 2010s, which was only beaten out by the likes of Messi and Ronaldo. And he was one of these strikers that combined a lot of the older traits of a classic number 9 and brought it in to the modern game. The height, the strength, the aerial ability and the two-footedness. He had it all, which honestly made him lethal when it came to poaching and being in the right place at the right time and finishing the ball into the back of the net. But at times where we only put him in this box of being a poacher, he showed us that he wasn't just that, scoring some long ranges during his time, adapting his game and scoring free kicks, and again continuously season after season proving people that doubt him wrong. Since the 2010s, he's now crossed over 700 career goals, whilst also winning FIFA's Best Player of the Year twice and kind of being robbed of a Ballon d'Or campaign back in 2020. And of course, these two guys are the ones that I'm going to mention first, but who are the other strikers that were reaching to become one of the best during this era too? I think the first name that comes to my mind is Kun Aguero. Now, Aguero spent the majority of the 2010s becoming a Premier League hero and legend of Manchester City, becoming the club's all-time scorer in the league with 184 goals. He etched his name into football history through brilliant moments marked by his goals. And it wasn't just Manchester City where he thrived also. It was when he was at Atletico Madrid before the move too. He was one of these strikers that was just remarkably consistent throughout his entire career, getting 20 plus league goals in 5 plus seasons, winning the Golden Boot in the 2014/15 season and winning 5 Premier League titles. And you also have to take into account that this was in a Manchester City side that was slowly evolving into a game where they didn't really require strikers as much. In and out of the side during the tail end of his Manchester City career, he would still pop up at big moments and score goals. And again, another caveat to this is that he had consistent injuries where they would pop up randomly throughout each and every season. And despite this, he still averaged the best minute per goal ratio of any striker, averaging a goal every 108 minutes. And what made him stand out so much to me is that this was not the biggest of strikers, standing less than 5'9" in height, yet his ability on the pitch resembled a classic number 9. And there are few strikers in Premier League history that can change a game as quick as Kun Aguero. And from one striker that averaged over 15 goals per season throughout his entire career to another striker that loves the number 15. Let's quickly give our flowers to Karim Benzema. In my opinion, Benzema is the ultimate slow burn superstar because time and time again, he was overshadowed by the brilliance of the Ronaldos, the Bales, and all the superstars that played for Real Madrid during the prime years. Yet his trajectory during the 2010s is completely underappreciated, and that's because he blossomed quite late in the decade, playing most of the early 2010s as a selfless striker that would offer up opportunities to those around him. But he knew what this all meant. He knew that this play style would win him trophies, and that's what they did. And even though he was seen as this generous striker that was giving opportunities to those around him, he still amassed an amazing, collection of goals during the 2010s. But when Ronaldo left in 2018, he stepped it up a notch, turning into this 30 goal a season talisman and a guy that was actually a predator in the box. He's a predator like just around the 18-yard box. He was scoring goals for fun. And from a striker that thrived in Spain to one that made his name known in France. Let's talk about Zlatan Ibrahimović and his impact on strikers during the 2010s. Now, Zlatan's 2010 journey is stuff of myth, something like an ancient legend. This is a story of many different changes throughout a career, sufficing in a bunch of goals. Because the king strutted across Europe and scored goals in each and every league that he stepped in. Winning titles in 4 different leagues, he showed that he was impactful wherever he went. And by the end of the decade, he had tallied over 570 career goals. The Swedish striker must have been built in a factory, being 6'4" tall, but with the agility of a 5'8", little midfielder, achieving 30 plus goal seasons in 6 campaigns. And when I say he could do it all, he could do it all. Karate kicks, acrobatic finishes, 30-yard screamers, headers in the box, poacher goals. He had 5-star skill moves on FIFA at one point. I was baffed. And for a moment during his tenure there, he was PSG's all-time top goal scorer. And it's weird because he could do everything that a classic target man could do, but more. Imagine a guy with a 6'5" frame playing like a false 9. That's what Ibra during his prime could do. He would lead PSG to 4 straight Ligue 1 titles from 2013 and would be a pioneer in the club, changing their legacy. And even at 35 years old, he would make a move to Manchester United in 2016/17 and score 28 goals, leading them to a Europa League title. Of course, people always talk about his Champions League legacy and the fact that he never won it, but in my opinion, he's still regarded as one of the best strikers during this time, but a striker that was honestly a lone ranger, a lone warrior that was on his own journey and never really sought to be approved of. Because as he said himself, a lion doesn't compare himself to humans. And from one striker that has an abundance of trophies with league domination to one that only just got his flowers recently, winning his first trophy just last season. Let's talk about Harry Kane. Now, Harry Kane established himself as one of the best strikers in football during the mid-2010s. Playing for Tottenham Hotspur, he won back-to-back Golden Boots in the 2015/16 season and 16/17. By 2020, he had amassed over 150 Premier League goals, and he was really making waves as a guy that was leading a side that was not supposed to be where they were positioned. And I think this is what stood out to me alongside with his well-rounded gameplay. He was a pure finisher that was able to play make and also had an amazing aerial ability. A sight that as an Arsenal fan I saw way too often, because time and time again this guy would score against my club, and if it wasn't a penalty it would just be a banger. And I'm only really mentioning him in this video because this is where we first saw the promise of Harry Kane, going from a prospect into an established world-class striker in the league. But in my opinion his peak years have come in the 2020s. He also holds the record for the most Premier League goals in a calendar year, being 39. But all in all, when it comes to Harry Kane, I think the only tarnish on his resume was the fact that he was never able to win silverware during his golden years at Tottenham Hotspur. But when talking about another English striker that had a firm grasp on this decade, we have to mention Wayne Rooney. Because Wayne Rooney is a striker that bridged generations, with his peak taking place in the late 2000s and early 2010s. And you didn't even have to watch football to know that this guy was a superstar. Being on the cover of FIFA year in and year out, you just knew that this guy was a bagsman. During his peak years, he solidified his status as an all-time Manchester United and England great, being United's top goal scorer of the decade until his departure in 2017. He finished off his career there with 208 Premier League goals, only behind Alan Shearer. He would man his trade as not only Manchester United's number 9, but also a guy that could adapt and be a number 10. Slowly over the years his game evolved and he took more of a back seat, but during his prime years he was an aggressive, all-action striker that could take the game to any team in football. From breaking out onto the scene back in Euro 2004 to being an established player that is written in the history books for Manchester United, Wayne Rooney will forever be a great and has a legacy that people completely overlook time and time again when just talking about strikers and players during this era. And it's each of these strikers that brought something different to this role, but it's not just them that made it their own, because there are a handful of other strikers that played during the 2010s that also were standout players. Van Persie was one of the most clinical strikers of this generation, with his, goal scoring ability peaking in the early 2010s, winning back-to-back golden boots in 2012 with Arsenal and then 2013 with Manchester United. In 2012 with Arsenal he went on a generational run, scoring some of the best goals you would see in any catalogue of any striker, and then he made a move to Manchester United and in his first season helped them win the league. A silky first touch and a distinct way in which he struck the ball, this guy is iconic to a lot of people's childhoods growing up. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang before his stint at Arsenal was also a speed demon and one of the most feared strikers in the Bundesliga, bringing a pace that we hadn't seen before to this position, a raw ability, terrorizing defenses in the Bundesliga for Dortmund and then kind of replicating his game and bringing that to Arsenal despite them being in a rocky period. In 2016/17 he scored 31 Bundesliga goals, edging Lewandowski in a fierce golden boot race. He was pivotal to this attack and formed an amazing duo with Marco Reus. And even when moving to Arsenal, he would win a golden boot in the 2018/19 season and would be a key part of an FA Cup run that saw him score goals against the likes of Manchester City. Mario Mandzukic was this warrior-like forward that may not have scored you 30 plus a season but had an immense impact on any club he played for. The Croatian is known for his Champions League final goals with Bayern in 2013 and Juventus in 2017, with the latter featuring an audacious bicycle kick that goes down as one of the best all-time Champions League final goals. Mandzukic's game was defined by his aggression and off-the-ball work. Pairing this with his aerial prowess, he was unstoppable at times and a key piece in a lot of teams that he played for, with major moments for club and also country. In the 2018 World Cup, I remember a goal that he scored for Croatia, when they were deep in their run. And another comparable striker to him during this time is Edin Džeko, the Bosnian diamond. This guy is still playing to this day, a quiet striker that shined across European clubs, beginning the decade by leading Wolfsburg to their first Bundesliga title in 2009 along with the help of Grafite. This guy then eventually moved to Manchester City and sealed his name as one of the best strikers in football, scoring the 92nd minute equaliser in Manchester City's famous 2012 Premier League win with that Aguero goal. Who was the guy that tied up the game, put the ball up top and said, "Let's run it"? It was Džeko. He would go on to win 2 Premier League titles and tallied over 50 goals whilst not being the main guy up top. And then after moving to AS Roma in the 2016/17 season, he absolutely exploded. Not physically, but in the goal scoring front, winning top goal scorer with 29 Serie A goals. And another great thing that happened in his career during the 2010s period is that he captained Bosnia to their first ever World Cup appearance. Carlos Tevez was another one of these strikers that was completely unseen for a lot of his career, yet looking back, he was again a brilliant striker, a tenacious bulldog of a striker whose intensity actually froze opposition. He would light it up wherever he played, making waves in the 2000s for the likes of West Ham, Manchester United, but in the 2010s he would really cement himself as one of the key bagsmen in the area and the era. I guess he's a bagsman in the area and the era. Yeah, getting 20 league goals with Manchester City, but again, he scored goals during his time at Manchester United and was a part of an amazing trio that goes down in history. And it was Carlos Tevez's off-ball work rate that really made him key to every squad that he was a part of, with a low centre of gravity which allowed him to dribble past opponents with ease, and just this immense ability to pop a shot from anywhere on a football pitch. Samuel Eto'o was also around in the 2010s, and though it was a twilight to his career, it was still a time where he was bagging goals. Arguably the greatest African striker of all time, this guy made waves wherever he played, with his prime honestly coming earlier from the likes of 2006 to 2009. And from one African striker that saw the tail end of his career in this era to another, we have to talk about Didier Drogba, aka the guy that would show up in all the big games no matter what. It didn't matter what defense showed up in front of him, he was getting a goal. It could have been the Trojan army, could have been Spartans, 300 style. If Drogba was in that war, he would have finished it himself. And a lot of people forget that Drogba's peak years were in the mid 2000s, not the 2010s, because in 2012, where his defining moment came, where he scored a header against Bayern Munich, this guy was 34, leading Chelsea to that title, scoring 9 goals in 9 cup finals throughout his entire career at Chelsea. He was the definition of clutch and hit a peak during the late 2000s and early 2010s, winning the Golden Boot in the 2010 season with 29 goals. As strong as an ox, great in the air, and an incredible ability to hit a long range strike. This guy would bully defenders to the point where Chelsea would take a goal kick, he would chest it down, turn and bang it. And despite it not going in all the time, he would create chances through this raw direct ability that he had. And no striker since has come close to this, again, power on the ball. You also had the likes of Cavani, El Matador, who was prolific during this time too. And I in particular remember his stint with Napoli in this side that was just filled with FIFA gems. Like, I'm gonna just keep it real with you. In the 2012/13 season, Cavani led the line, getting 29 goals for Napoli. Then came a big money move to PSG, which saw his form be replicated in a league that was seen as easier. And with that, his goal scoring inflated, scoring over 157 goals for PSG, and at one point being their all-time goal scorer before the Mbappes came along. And alongside one South American bagsman comes another in Radamel Falcao, El Tigre, who for one season was probably the best number 9 in football. From around 2011 to 2013, Falcao was unplayable. At Atletico Madrid, he scored 70 goals in 2 seasons, including a ridiculous tally of 17 in the 2010/11 Europa League. 17 goals in the Europa League alone. Some strikers are getting that in their entire 2 seasons at a club. He led the line at the likes of Porto, Atletico Madrid and even Monaco. And one of my favourite moments throughout his entire career is his hat-trick in the Super Cup against Chelsea back in 2012. Unfortunately, an ACL injury back in 2014 led to him missing, the World Cup with Colombia, but again, he somehow bounced back, and in 2015/16 he was injected into a Monaco side with young ballers with the likes of Mbappe in the squad, Thomas Lemar, it was Bernardo Silva, and Falcao was at the top, helping Monaco win a Ligue 1 title and led them deep in the Champions League, with my favourite goal of his being that dink against Manchester City in the Champions League. That was an amazing goal. And even despite all his setbacks and failed stints at the likes of Manchester United and Chelsea, he still amassed over 300 career goals. To really understand how far we've come, we have to go back in time, as we always do on this channel. Rewinding time to when 2 strikers were infiltrating the game, which was from the 90s to the early 2000s. Back then, nearly every top club used 2 strikers on a football pitch, because during this time the 4-4-2 was a default setting. You could not change this tactic, and within that structure laid these 2 bagsmen up top, with the perfect case study being Man United's treble-winning duo Andy Cole and Dwight Yorke. Now of course I wasn't really around to watch these two play football, but I know for a fact that they were big time. Two strikers that would dominate the late 90s and the early 2000s, even being featuring in a lot of early Nike football adverts. Dwight Yorke played with this flair and finesse that we see in modern strikers, with fine touches and moments of technical brilliance sprinkled throughout his game. And pairing this up with Andy Cole's pace and ruthlessness in front of goal, it was a match made in heaven. But what made it even better was their chemistry. At times they were moving like they were genetically linked, one touch passes setting up the other in attacking scenarios. Flicks, layoffs, volleys, they didn't just score goals, they invented finishes, scoring 53 combined goals in the 98/99 season, whilst also winning a Champions League title and being a part of a historic Manchester United team. We also had Alan Shearer and Chris Sutton, two strikers that not a lot of people watching this video would even have heard of. Well, besides Alan Shearer. This guy is the top goal scorer in the Premier League in history, ever, all time. Bold head. These two were a striker duo for Blackburn Rovers back in 1994 to 96, with Alan Shearer being one of the most ruthless finishers in Premier League and football history, and Chris Sutton being more of the physical target man that would hold up the ball and give it to Alan. And it was together that they powered Blackburn to their first title since 1914, and they would go on to obliterate defences with their direct, aggressive way of playing. Del Piero and Inzaghi were another striker duo that not a lot of people really talk about. Playing together in the late 90s, they achieved some big things, reaching multiple Champions League finals, with Del Piero being the artist, being able to drop in deep, pick up the ball and really dictate the tempo of the game, and Filippo Inzaghi being an absolute assassin, getting a goal by any means possible. Everyone already knows him for his ability to manipulate the offside trap, but he was also just, an outstanding poacher of the ball. He could get you a goal no matter how ugly it looked. And of course the pinnacle of striker duos in my opinion that played during this similar era was Henry and Dennis Bergkamp. These two forged a duo that was more of a different take on the classic two-man striker setup. Because Bergkamp wasn't made out to be a 10, he evolved into one of the best. His creativity just fed Thierry Henry time and time again, seamlessly blending his pass-first methodology into Henry's pacey game. Henry would be given the freedom to drift wide, and Bergkamp could drop in deep and create things just like that. His movement and telepathic connection with Thierry Henry would lead Arsenal to success in the early 2000s, scoring over 180 goals combined in 5 seasons. And round the world during this time there were many different variations of this 4-4-2 striker setup, from teams playing in a 3-5-2 to a 4-3-1-2. They all utilised two strikers. And again, it was these types of setups that gave us even more memorable pairings. The likes of Raúl and Morientes of Real Madrid, Crespo and Chiesa of Parma, Kluivert and Rivaldo of Barcelona. And why did it work so well? Because these two strikers could constantly apply pressure to centre backs at the time, and if one was feeling lazy, the other one would go, squeezing the defence. These are modern ideologies that were forged into the game very early on, with over time this being evolved into teams using 3 guys up top, which could apply even more pressure. And as the 2000s rolled on, we slowly saw a tactical revolution being spearheaded in football. And at the heart of this change was midfield control. And in came the rise of 3-man midfields. Managers like Jose Mourinho and Rafa Benitez infiltrated the game with 3-man midfields, beginning to emphasize this more compact way of playing, in contrast to the expansive forward line that would pretty much consist of 2 strikers and 2 guys on either side that were pretty much wingers. Adding 3 men playing centrally in midfield would allow teams to control the ball for longer, dominating the other sides that were still utilizing 2 strikers up top. And this shift slowly led to the disappearance of the second striker because, they had no more space to really roam. We had the introductions of lone strikers, 2 wingers and 3-man midfields. And with this came even more hardships for some of our favourite strikers at the time that used to be utilised in a 2-man striker formation. One example for me would be Thierry Henry once moving on from Arsenal. When Henry joined Barcelona back in 2007, he had to abandon this dual dynamic striker duo that he had pretty much pioneered in his entire time playing with Arsenal. This dynamic that he had playing off of someone had completely disappeared. And under Pep Guardiola, who was another manager who spearheaded 3-man midfields and 3 guys up top, he, kind of lost the spark to his game, being pushed out onto the left hand side rather than playing centrally. Whilst over time, despite seeing success, Messi would adopt the false 9 role and eventually Thierry Henry would be forced to leave. And despite various success here and there of 2 strikers coming up in football, the likes of Wolfsburg and Džeko and Grafite, there wasn't many. This way of playing with 2 strikers up top became a tactical antique, something that fans could just look back on, appreciate, but never really grasp and bring in to modern football, because the elite clubs would stop using this method of playing entirely. And who can really blame them? Tactics were always going to evolve, and the introduction of inverted wingers is probably the best introduction in football that we have ever seen when it comes to tactics. Some of the most flashy and entertaining players play in this role. So this video isn't me saying that 2 strikers in football are superior, this is just me appreciating this time when 2 strikers in football were a thing that wasn't just seen sparsely in football, but that was a staple, where we could witness some of the most legendary strikers paired up with each other. The likes of Rooney and Tevez at Manchester United, pressing and causing chaos for defences. Trezeguet and Henry forged an amazing duo for France in the Euros back in 2000, complementing each other's skill sets perfectly. Zamorano and Salas of Chile back in the 90s were also causing chaos internationally. And I can't forget a duo like Adriano and Vieri, aka Bobo. Pure brutality, power and finishing. These 2 guys were strikers that could probably lead a side by themselves, but at times for Inter they were paired up. But wait, despite all of these lost duos in football, there've still been times where strikers have been paired up and actually had some success in the modern game. One example would be when Julian Nagelsmann was the manager of RB Leipzig and he had the likes of Poulsen and Timo Werner up top. They had some success. That's when Werner was making his name. Gasparini's reign at Atalanta also saw him use 2 strikers here and there too. From Zapata and Papu Gomez to Zapata and Muriel. Simeone's Atletico Madrid also used 2 strikers for a while, with the likes of Griezmann and Morata being utilised up top. And probably the one that you guys are screaming to talk about, Inter Milan. They are probably the only modern side that are actually decent that utilise 2 strikers, whether it was Lautaro Martínez and Lukaku a few seasons back, or right now Lautaro Martínez and Marcus Thuram. I know I made some big claims last year about Alexander Isak, and many of us did, because after seeing his run of form last season with Newcastle, bro, I was standing up. I was saying this is the next Messiah, this is the next Thierry Henry, this is the Eritrean Thierry Henry. I was ready. Sign up for Arsenal, come and join the team and take over the league. But no, since the start of this season, since his move to Liverpool, we've just been faced with disappointment after disappointment. And yet there is some sort of future there. He could just burst onto the scene again next season and just take over, or the second half. 2026 might be his year, but right now he just is lackluster. He's not really doing anything for me. And this has made me come to the realization that we are in the great striker plateau era, where we've experienced these peaks and now it's either just declining or just going at some sort of standstill, where we've been at the same level for a few years now, with familiar faces like Mbappe and Haaland putting up great numbers, but strikers now just coming and going here and there. And it's like every big club in football right now are on the hunt for the next big thing. Who's going to be the next world-class striker? Who's the one we should invest our money in? Liverpool invested kind of wisely but also stupidly, putting down 130 million for Isak when the better striker that they bought was actually Hugo Ekitike, who we will speak about in this video. Like, in your head right now, compare strikers that we have in the current age of football and then flash back to 10 years ago. Now, you're going to label me as a nostalgia merchant. We all know that, you know, the old football is better than football that we're experiencing now. But it's not really an opinion anymore, it's just a fact. 10 years ago, the leading striker in the world was Luis Suárez, and he wasn't even the best player or considered to be the best player in the world. I can list off about 50 strikers in 2015 that were better than the ones that are being applauded as, oh, the next big thing in this current modern era of football. Like, I've got people genuinely saying to me that Mateta is going to be the next big thing. Bro, Mateta already had his time as a youngster. He ain't young no more. Is Mateta any better than Demba Ba or Pape Cisse? No, he's not. And from 10 years ago, let's go to 5 years ago, where we still had strikers from that era, but also new breakout stars coming in and scoring goals, the likes of Harry Kane. In the 2020 to 21 season, this guy won the Golden Boot and like the Playmaker Award. He was outstanding in the Premier League. And in the Premier League, you still had strikers that were capable of doing big things. Lewandowski was still around. Benzema was about to have a peak year in a couple seasons. But now it's like every club that buys or invests in a striker, they are just looking to the future with their fingers crossed. Please, you are going to be the next one. Nobody right now can go out into the market and buy a world-class striker that they know is going to start for their team and bag goals. And that's just the way football is going right now, and that's what I call the great striker plateau era. An era that we are currently in where we won't see outlier strikers for the next 2-3 years. Because it actually takes time for a striker to become world class. You do need about 2 or 3 seasons of consistent goals. Think about how long it took for Lewandowski to actually make a name for himself. He was balling out at Borussia Dortmund and had to make a move to Bayern Munich just to score goals again, and then everyone said, you know what, let's respect this guy. And right now, stuff like that is not happening. You know, big strikers aren't going from one big team to another, and also big strikers are going from big teams to small teams, like Victor Osimhen, who had a breakout year with Napoli, 2 or 3 years of brilliance. You know, he even moved from Lille for a fee of like 70 million euros. Then after this dispute with Napoli, he decided to make a move, but none of the big teams were seen to even be interested in investing in a striker that had so much potential. And now he's at Galatasaray. Is anyone watching this video watching Galatasaray week in and week out? The majority of you will say no, just because they're not a top 5 European team. You know, they are in the Champions League and he's had some good games there, but still, you're going to forget about his existence if he doesn't move to a bigger club. Teams right now don't seem to be investing in world-class proven strikers because there aren't many of them, so they didn't want to risk it with Osimhen. And then even when you're trying to invest in a striker right now, they have to tick like 10 different boxes just because of the way football has evolved and developed. They have to be able to stretch the pitch but also drop in deep and receive the ball, whilst also winning duels and combining with their teammates. And adding this ability to press the back line or drop in deep and create like a 10 or win headers from a goal kick. All of these attributes need to be had before even the simple ones like finishing. But anyway, let's quickly go over the 3 strikers in football that, in my opinion, are world class. First of all, we have to talk about Erling Haaland, who at this point is genuinely AI. You know, this guy is not real. He is a robot. He has been programmed into the system that we partake in watching, because since he stepped foot into Manchester City, he just went up into a different realm. He recently just became the fastest ever player to reach 100 goals in the Premier League, beating out some of your favourite and the world's favourite strikers. And from the start of the season up until now, this guy's got 15 goals in the Premier League alone. That is the most competitive league in football right now, and he just dominates. And you can always argue and say his link-up play is not the best. You know, he's not the best on the feet, but he gets the goals, and that's all that matters. When you talk about classic strikers in football, when you delve into the early 2000s, that's what you needed in a striker, not all these other attributes, and Haaland provides that. With 101 touches in the opposition box since the start of the season, this guy is hungry for more. And if you want to keep claiming that he doesn't do link-up play, his link-up play is the best in football because he links up his play with the back of the net.
Oh, genius!
Then you've got Harry Kane, who in all honesty is like the final boss of strikers. This guy can do it all. And even taking into account that he's facing Bundesliga tax by balling out at Bayern Munich, he's still upkeeping levels that he set when he was in the Premier League, playing for Tottenham. Just think about if Harry Kane played for the likes of Manchester City, Chelsea, Liverpool during his time in the Premier League. This guy will be known as the greatest English striker of all time. But because of his personal choices, he's not applauded as one of the best. Yet, since making a move to Bayern Munich, he's just upkept his levels and even improved on them. And in the Bundesliga this season, he's got over 17 goals and 3 assists. And of course, he faces penalty taxes, Bundesliga taxes, the defense is rubbish over there. But still, this is Harry Kane at the back end of his career, just balling out and providing Bundesliga fans with a world-class showing week in and week out. Because he honestly can do it all. He can occupy defenders, but also drop in deep into the midfield, link up play, and then follow it up with a touch in the box and a goal. And then we've got Kylian Mbappe, who in my opinion is not even a real striker. This guy is still that left winger that we all used to know him as. But since being slotted into a Real Madrid side, he's had to adapt and become a striker that is deadly, but is not the traditional sort of number 9. And in my opinion, Mbappe being in the top strikers in football right now is further proof that the striker pool is just thinning. The fact we've thrown in left wingers into this category is showing that we haven't got too many of outliers in this position. Mbappe is showing that he's a transitional demon, someone that can pop up in the box, but also a lot of his goals have come outside of the box too, with him garnering 16 goals and 4 assists in the league so far this season, with also big goals in other competitions too. Now, other than these 3 outliers in the striker category, I think a big problem with strikers in football right now is to do with market inflation and just the prices that are being thrown about for the so-called next ones up. Because clubs are out here throwing millions upon millions at strikers that they don't even know that are proven. Taking risks on strikers that haven't really proven themselves in all competitions and at top clubs. And of course you can say to me that Newcastle are a big club in modern day football, but a player going for 130 million from Newcastle to Liverpool hasn't really gone into fruition, and it hasn't really been proven as a great signing just yet. And when you really look at the bigger picture, Isak only really had one brilliant outlier season with Newcastle to earn that move to Liverpool. Similar to Viktor Gyökeres, he had 2 amazing seasons, or 2 or 3 amazing seasons, but that was at Sporting Lisbon or Sporting in Portugal. That's not a top 5 European league, and again, he wasn't proven or a proven player in all competitions. He's made a move to Arsenal for big money. A £64 million investment that Arsenal made for Gyökeres to be their main man in the attacking line. Someone that was supposed to bring the goals immediately has not lived up to expectations, and even the goals that he has scored, they have not been pretty at all. At this point, we're not really buying strikers, we're buying Twitter compilations or YouTube football compilations. Like, this is not normal. But let's go over some other strikers in football, because we've still got the likes of Lewandowski kicking ball and scoring goals. He still seems to be Barcelona's main man despite being at the back end of his career. And even when he's rotated out of the side, Barcelona have Ferran Torres, who seems to be in on the goals whenever he's given an opportunity to score them. But again, the combination of Ferran Torres and Lewandowski, they're not really promising for Barcelona fans when it comes to the striker position as a whole. Because realistically, Lewandowski isn't going to be playing for the next 5 years, especially at a top club like Barcelona. And Ferran Torres has proved time and time again in them big moments that he doesn't come up clutch, when you really need a goal. Like, he had a chance against Chelsea a few weeks back where he could have switched the entire momentum of the game, and he misses a big chance. That's something that can't be happening to Barcelona. And the guy that could probably replace Ferran Torres at Barcelona is Julian Alvarez, a striker who in my opinion is actually an entire system. Because even this season for Atletico, even with them being lackluster at certain points, Julian Alvarez has been one of their best players. He's the ideal hybrid striker that can do it all, but again, lacks consistency. With goals and brilliant performances against the likes of Real Madrid this season, he really needs to show that he is deserving of this, name of being a world-class striker. Then you've got a guy like Benjamin Sesko, who came with promise to Manchester United. And it seems like he's just currently loading into the system, rendering. This guy is still cooking, baking in the oven. We gotta wait 5 years for him to come into fruition. Because in all honesty, he is like the perfect archetype for these new and improved strikers in football. He's tall, he's fast, he can get in behind, he's athletic, he can deal with link-up play, he's pretty technical on the feet. But in 11 appearances this season, he's got like 2 goals and 1 assist. You know, nothing crazy, nothing good, nothing outlandish. And Manchester United didn't just bring him in this summer, they also brought in Matheus Cunha, who was an outstanding baller for Wolves. But again, Wolves, not a big club that he was proven at in the European competitions too. He's come to Manchester United, they're hoping that he's going to change their entire fate. But of course, he's not really done that. And he started off brightly at times and scored a goal here and there, but no, he's not really the main guy. He's not really someone that we're going to see and think, yeah, this guy is going to change Manchester United. And of course, you're probably screaming at me, Jean-Philippe Mateta. Mateta, you know, he's a great striker, but is he one of the best that we've seen in the last 3 years? Hell no. He's just a humble striker that goes about scoring his goals for Crystal Palace. He puts his body out there. He's more of a traditional 9. And he has seen some success. With 41 shots in the last 15 games, he's garnered around 7 goals. But again, these aren't crazy numbers that are just changing the game, are they? And you also need multiple seasons of this consistency with him. And to me, Mateta's just another Chris Wood. You know, having outlier seasons here and there, but not doing anything crazy. If he makes a big move, if he starts scoring and somehow brings Crystal Palace to the Champions League spots, then I'm going to be put on notice. But other than that, he just remains at this same level. You've also got the likes of Liam Delap and João Pedro for Chelsea. 2 strikers that again showed promise at the previous clubs that they were at. Liam Delap scoring many goals and being an outlier for Ipswich during their time in the Premier League before making a move to Chelsea. And João Pedro being a hothead and the likes of Brighton, showing his Brazilian flair here and there and scoring big goals before making the move to Stamford Bridge. But again, neither of these strikers can have this claim at being world class because they just have not shown it since the start of the season or in any of the cameos that we've seen. I think one of my favourite newer gen strikers in the world right now is Voltemade of Newcastle, the replacement that Newcastle brought in for Alexander Isak. But again, for a guy that moved from Germany to move to Newcastle to even be put up there in conversations of the best striker in the league and also European football, you have to be proven at these levels. You need to be taking Newcastle deep into the season, scoring double-figure goals, getting up to 20. He has to pretty much do what Alexander Isak did, but even more. But he does show signs of promise. You know, his link-up play is incredible. His technical ability for someone that tall at like 6'7" is immense. But again, he is involved in this mass fraud check of Premier League strikers. You know, all of these strikers need to be checked if their credentials were factual in the first place. And I think the only one of these new gen strikers in the Premier League currently that can claim to be the next Alexander Isak that is going to be up there trying to challenge for Haaland in the next 3 years as one of the best or the best in the Premier League is Hugo Ekitike. And he's someone that I was watching last season during his time at Frankfurt because I was doing a little scouting report on Omar Mamouche. And Mamouche has kind of gone a different separate way, dropping into a more of a 10 role or a winger for Manchester City. Whereas Hugo Ekitike, since making a move from Frankfurt to Liverpool, has become, you know, their main striker. Proving all the doubters wrong that thought Alexander Isak was going to take his position instantly, Hugo Ekitike has come up clutch for Liverpool time and time again this season. Even in a recent game against Brighton in the Premier League, Hugo Ekitike scored within like the first minute. And this was not any tap-in sort of finish, this was a belter that went into the roof of the net. He time and time again shows that he can be that guy and should be that guy for not only club but country too. And in this era of failed strikers, it's good to see, you know, strikers like Hugo Ekitike that are doing it at all levels. He's doing it for Liverpool in the Premier League, but also in the Champions League games that we've tried to see of him. But again, nobody is going to take Ekitike seriously unless Liverpool get their act together, because there's only so much a striker can do to carry an entire club. We've seen it with Alexander Isak with Newcastle in the Champions League. He wasn't able to, you know, carry them further into that competition. He wasn't able to do the things that Newcastle fans really thought he would do. And then you've got other strikers in football like Serhou Guirassy, who I made a video about back in the day saying that he was going to be the next Haaland. Of course, he's not really the next Haaland, but during his time at Stuttgart, he went on an immense run of form where he was challenging Harry Kane during Kane's first season at Bayern Munich. He was going goal for goal with Harry Kane. He was showing all types of, finishes. And honestly, since making that move to Dortmund, he has been scoring for them too. Scoring hat-tricks against Barcelona in the Champions League last season. But again, unless he starts doing it week in and week out and then makes a move elsewhere again like a Lewandowski did, he's not going to be put up there as a world-class striker just because of the team that he's playing for. And also, this rise is coming at kind of the peak years, so he needs to maintain it because he's like 28, 29. Like, this is not the young striker. This is an old striker that's kind of blooming late. Now, it's hard to pinpoint what a modern striker actually does, because nowadays the standards for a modern striker is that they need to be able to press the defense, score poacher goals, be able to take on a defense by themselves, occupy two centre backs that are marking them all game, be good aerially, be able to hold up the ball and bring others into play. There's just so many things that make a good striker in modern football. And as we all know, the pinnacle of this modern striker right now in the game, and someone that has been strutting his stuff on the world stage at World Cup 2026 so far, is Erling Haaland. Because the striker that is not really a striker and is actually a robot, he is AI, he is Claude, he is ChatGPT. He's been strutting his stuff on the world stage, scaring opposition with his pressing in 100 times speed. Like, if I saw this guy running at me and I was a defender, I would just give him the ball, simply. Just take the ball off me and you go score the goals. Because there's no way. Forget this. I'd rather fight a bear. And what's so remarkable about Erling Haaland doing it at this level is the fact that he's dragged Norway to a World Cup. And with the last time Norway qualified for a World Cup being 1998, this is now a new bunch of players in this Norway side that are completely different. Some actually being born, after 1998. Ultimately, they have Haaland and Ødegaard, and then you look at the rest of the squad and none of them are household names. Obviously, you got the brilliance of Antonio Nusa, Oscar Bob from Manchester City, you got Sander Berge in the middle, but still, in comparison to the other side characters from, other nations, these guys don't compare. Yet it's one man that has dragged his nation forward, and it's been Erling Haaland. From his days at Molde, then Salzburg, then Dortmund, and then Manchester City, Haaland has not stopped scoring, with remarkable moments throughout his journey. Like on his debut for Dortmund, he would come off the bench and score a hat-trick. Then he appeared at Manchester City and just rewrote the entire script for, Premier League strikers, with him joining Manchester City and already being one of the best strikers in Premier League history. And in the season that just went, he would score 27 goals in 35 matches in the league alone, whilst also reaching 100 Premier League goals. And if you were to show some of these stats to the average 2010s football fan, they would have thought that this character was created on career mode in FIFA. These are the types of stats that you're putting up yourself as a player career mode when you're controlling the player. But no, this is Erling Haaland. And when you compare him to any of the strikers from the 2010s era, his numbers alone blow them out of the water. And aesthetically, you might say he's not up to standard with guys like Robin van Persie, Carlos Tevez, Sergio Aguero. But in terms of raw numbers, in terms of what he's giving you, there is no one that comes close to the man that looks like Shrek, Erling Haaland, the beast. It's incredible. And so far in the World Cup, he's been able to score goals just as easy as he does in the Premier League, with 2 against Iraq and 2 against Senegal. He actually didn't play against France in Norway's last group game because Norway made 10 changes to their starting 11, resting him for, the knockout stages. But with Norway having made it to the knockout stages, I'm sure that he's going to want to get involved with the goals. And Norway are coming up against one of my favourites in the competition, Ivory Coast, the nation that I just love because of their history and also their players. That is going to be a clash that the whole world will be watching. Will Haaland be able to score against Ivory Coast just like, the next striker on this list did? Because Deniz Undav in the group stage actually scored a goal against Ivory Coast to break the hearts of so many. Even though this Ivory Coast side probably deserved the victory on the day and Simon Adingra missed an absolute sitter by just hesitating on the ball, Deniz Undav would receive a ball from the Mecha in such a clean way, just touching it down. It's still in control, he's turned, he's shot, and it's brilliant. and he is becoming one of the most efficient men in the World Cup so far. And with him only playing like 57 minutes total in the group stage, he got 3 goals and 2 assists. This is not real. Someone fact check the numbers. What's going on? Those are incredible numbers because not only can he score goals, but he also is a provider too. And I mean, I'm not trying to be rude or anything, but you look at Deniz Undav and you compare him to the strikers that are out there, the athletes, the beasts. This guy's not looking like an athlete, bro. Let's just be honest. This guy is making the average man get inspired. Oh, I'm gonna make it to the next World Cup. Yeah? I'm gonna eat 15 burgers and make it to the next World Cup. That's what Deniz Undav is doing. He's looking like R9 when he was at Corinthians, and I am loving it. Deniz Undav don't care, because if he's scoring goals, that's all that matters. And with Germany coming up against, I'm pretty sure, Paraguay in the knockout stage, I'm pretty sure he's going to get some goals, or alongside him or Kai Havertz. Whoever starts, they're going to be feasting. Deniz Undav is outperforming all the top players when it comes to goals per minute, with him having a goal contribution every 13.8 minutes that he's played. His job right now seems to be a super sub, with Nagelsmann not trusting him for a full 90 minutes. And honestly, for me, this kind of works. You know, let Kai Havertz do all the running and then bring Undav in, who can make impact where it matters. Because despite him not looking like the most athletic, he can occupy a defense better than a lot of strikers in the tournament. His movement is great, and you actually saw him score another goal in this game against Ivory Coast, I'm pretty sure, where again it's his movement in the box to get to the ball, which is not seen by a lot of strikers. But the next striker that we have to talk about definitely does do a lot of box movement, and someone that gets into the right place at the right time. That is Brian Brobby. Because Brian Brobby in the World Cup for the Netherlands, oh, he has been a revelation. I can't lie, they haven't seen a striker like this occupying defences in a while. And despite the Netherlands seeing the brilliance of Wout Weghorst in the last World Cup, Brian Brobby is a different sort of, dynamic. A dynamic powerhouse in a sense that he is going to occupy a defense, not just 2 defenders, but he can occupy 4 defenders at once because they can't get close to him. He has an orb around him because of his strength. He's actually a striker that not a lot of football fans outside of the Premier League know about. But for Premier League fans watching this video, we know that this guy was crazy for Sunderland last season, helping them actually finish in Europe and do things that we could never imagine. Brian Brobby was at the hands of a lot of Sunderland's wins. He joined the Ajax Academy back in 2010, growing up inside the famous Dutch school. And after honing his skills at Ajax, we have seen a breakout season for him at Sunderland in the Premier League. But let's not forget, back in the 2023/24 season, he was Ajax's player of the season, getting 22 goals in 43 appearances. And it's weird because at the start of the World Cup, the Netherlands weren't starting Brian Brobby. They would start their first match with, I think, Donyell Malen up top, but despite him having such a brilliant season for AS Roma, it just wouldn't replicate onto this stage. But Brian Brobby was introduced in that second game against Sweden. And against Sweden, he would score 2 goals within like 17 minutes. With him becoming the second ever Dutch player to score 2 goals on his World Cup debut. The Netherlands would win that game 5-1 thanks to not only Brobby but a bunch of their players like Gakpo, who just turns up for every World Cup tournament. And Brobby has continued since with a goal against Tunisia as well, and then going into the knockouts he's going to be looking to add to his tally against Morocco. But it's not like Morocco don't have a goal scorer of their own, someone that is also occupying defences but is also a bit silky on the feet, providing a bit of flair and technique that the average striker can't show. We have to talk about Ismaïla Saibari. Now, Saibari was actually born in Spain, with his roots coming from Morocco. And from his family life moving from Spain, then Belgium, then the Netherlands, this guy's been around, collecting passports wherever he went and also knowledge about the game. As a teenager, Saibari was actually released from Anderlecht's youth academy because of his weight. He didn't look the part. He wasn't one of them big muscular strikers that is going to hold off the ball, and they said, you know what, bye bye. But Saibari would actually end up at PSV after battling for so long. And in the 2025/26 season, he was named Player of the Year, getting 15 goals and 8 assists for PSV. Helping them retain a title, he had proven a lot of the doubters wrong. He's been kind of in the underground, performing for PSV where nobody can really watch him. But now for Morocco at the World Cup in 2026, he has shown that his, abilities can be replicated against elite defenders. He actually scored in all 3 of Morocco's group games in this competition, whilst also in the background signing for Bayern Munich, with his first in the tournament being a brilliant goal against Brazil, the opener in the game. Just the finesse of the finish, the dink over the keeper and, being able to split a defence with his run. Then you would see him score a winner against Scotland in a tight, cagey game that both sides needed to win, whilst also scoring an equaliser against Haiti too, who were battling against Morocco all game. He for me is my favourite striker at the tournament so far because of his elusive ability to look like he can occupy a defence on, the physical ability of himself, but he's so light on the feet. The way he can just turn on a ball and just make things happen and bring others into play. He honestly doesn't strike me as an outward striker, but more of a, a 10, a centre forward, someone that can drop in deep, play with the, the rest of his teammates and also make final third runs. Him and his Moroccan teammates will be coming up against the Netherlands and going up against Brian, Robbie, and we will see who will come out on top, but these 2 strikers, Brian Robbie and Saibari, they have, a bunch of potential in their hands. But a striker that actually had potential and seemed to lose it and has now regained it so far in this tournament is Yoane Wissa. He would be called a transfer flop by a lot of people after the previous season with Newcastle, with them bringing him in alongside Voltemade. But so far in World Cup 2026, Yoane Wissa has had some elite games and scored some brilliant goals. And think about how much it means to be the starting striker for DR Congo after them not appearing in this competition since like the 1970s. Yoane Wissa has a lot of weight on his shoulders and so far he's been carrying them. My favourite performance from him was against Portugal, with him completely changing the mood of the game. And then you can talk about his performance against Uzbekistan where he would score 2 goals helping Congo win 3-1. 2 goals that also Cristiano Ronaldo would score against Uzbekistan, and at the end of the game he's saying I'm back. Yoane Wissa scored 2 goals and his goals were actually better. And I'm not hating Ronaldo, I love Ronaldo, but come on, you can't say I'm back to Uzbekistan. You can only say I'm back after winning against Uzbekistan if you battled them in MMA, not football. Let's just leave that out. Yoane Wissa would join Newcastle for 50 million after moving from Brentford and not have the best of seasons. But with DR Congo having built this squad around him so far in this tournament, it looks like he might be able to do something for this nation even in the knockout stage. And another striker that needs to do something for their nation in the knockout stage is Matheus Cunha. Yes, I'm talking about this guy. Yeah, that celebration, just cut that celebration, never show anyone that footage because what is going on? Surfing, yeah? You know what? If I was a footballer, my celebration would actually be this. Yeah? I would do this. I would do Gangnam Style instead. Now, Cunha's whole career has been just a slow walk forward to the right move. From the likes of RB Leipzig to Hertha Berlin, Atletico Madrid as well, and then a stint at Wolves, Cunha has been around for a while yet never really been seen as a world-class striker, yet last season for Manchester United he was really stepping up. In August of 2025 he would secure a move to Manchester United for £62.5 million. And that United move mattered more than the price tag because since then Cunha's status in football has just risen. In his first campaign he scored 10 goals and 2 assists, I'm pretty sure, in a side that was still figuring out what they're trying to do with Cunha. But at the World Cup so far he's been brought in over Igor Thiago, who started the first group stage game, and he's offered a lot more, helping out the midfield that seems to be weakened in this Brazilian side by dipping in and putting link-up play with the likes of Vini Jr. But we'll just have to see how his tournament turns out. He's grabbed a couple goals so far and he's been, a big time player for Brazil. But again, I think it's a bit early for Cunha, and I just think he does need a really good season for Manchester United coming out of the World Cup, which I'm just excited to see. Another striker I wanted to mention is Ayase Ueda of Japan. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, I just know that he is the striker for Japan, and so far when watching Japan in the World Cup 2026 he's been brilliant. And the pattern of strikers from the Eredivisie is continuing, because Ueda actually plays for Feyenoord. And so far in this World Cup, he's just become this quiet star that no one's really talking about, who's been essential to Japan's build-up play in a lot of their attacks. Against Tunisia, he would be active and score twice in the game, with him also showing throughout the tournament that he doesn't just score, low-driven shots. He can actually jump up and header a ball into the back of the net too. He is averaging the highest rating of any Japanese player so far in World Cup 2026. And this means a lot for me because going into this tournament, Japan have been hindered by the absences of Mitoma and also Minamino. But for someone like Ueda to stand up tall and score some goals and also create, it's a big, boost for this Japanese side that are still looking at themselves as underdogs, and them coming up against Brazil in the round of 32 is going to be a tough game. But I do see that they will grab a goal in the game and could potentially actually do something to Brazil. And I think the last striker that I want to mention for the current strikers at World Cup 2026 is Oyarzabal. Mikel Oyarzabal. Oyarzabal. You know what, guys have been training me how to say his name, and still I struggle. Sorry guys. But Oyarzabal, please, Oyarzabal, you need to take a bow. Yeah? Bow. Because every time for Spain, it doesn't matter what competition it is, Euros, friendlies, the Nations League, Oyarzabal is the starting striker for Spain and is always scoring goals. This guy was involved in, I'm pretty sure, 3 goals in the first 25 minutes when Spain took on Saudi Arabia. And it's not like Spain have been really, impressive so far in the group stage. They haven't conceded a goal, I'm pretty sure, but it's just the fact that when they do need a goal, this guy's just always there. Despite him missing multiple opportunities in every single game, he will still pop up with something vital and get on the end of it. And I just think he's going to go down as one of these strikers that nobody, ever remembers in like 10 years, despite him having such a big impact in this era of the Spanish national team. But if we want to go back and talk about Spanish strikers, then we've got David Villa, then we've got Fernando Torres, and these guys on completely different levels. And I think if Spain had a striker of that caliber in this side, it would be a different level of brilliance. I actually decided to go back into previous World Cups and check out what the Golden Boot race was like then. I checked out 2022 all the way back until 2006, and one thing that I kind of came to the conclusion of is that the Golden Boot is the surefire way to not win the World Cup, because the last Golden Boot winner that also won the World Cup in that same year was R9. That was back in 2002, and every year since then in the World Cup, the Golden Boot winner has never grasped the World Cup in that same year. You either take one or the other. And I guess we'll start off in Qatar back in 2022, because this one honestly didn't feel real at the time. The Golden Boot that year went to Kylian Mbappe, scoring 8 goals in the tournament, one ahead of Lionel Messi. And Mbappe started slow by his standards, scoring 3 in the group stage, which was nothing absurd, whilst also scoring a couple against Denmark to send France through to the knockout stage. But from the moment the knockouts began, a gear inside of him just shifted, like he's Luffy, gear secondo. And with him bagging 2 goals in the round of 16 against Poland, it was only the start, with one of the goals being low and hard and just burying Wojciech Szczesny. But you know what, after this game against Poland, Mbappe would kind of slow down. And then came the final, where Mbappe would produce one of the greatest individual performances in World Cup history, scoring a hat-trick in a final, taking it to the Argentinians and specifically Lionel Messi. And for about 80 minutes of that final, it honestly felt like he was invisible. But that's all it takes for the narrative to change, because 20 minutes completely summarized his tournament. 20 minutes of big moments, 20 minutes of stepping up, and 20 minutes of him proving why he is one of the best on the planet right now. And it was crazy because Argentina were just dominating this game, with Messi orchestrating his troops. Then in a split second he scored a penalty, he scored an outrageous volley, and he's buried another penalty. That day he became the second ever man to score a hat-trick in a World Cup final since Geoff Hurst back in 1966 versus the Germans. And then after all of that, France would lose on penalties, leaving Mbappe with this bittersweet feeling, but also leaving him with a Golden Boot. But that 2022 campaign by Mbappe definitely wasn't as good as the one that he's living through now. In 2026, he's just 1 goal behind his tally of 8. And with a quarter-final against Morocco up ahead and potentially, 2 more games after that, there's definitely room for him to score more goals. I don't think 2022 was the most vintage Mbappe that we've seen in recent years. However, what I do know is that we've got another Golden Boot winner to talk about. Because in 2018 there was another Golden Boot winner that didn't win the World Cup. It was 2018 in Russia, and the Englishman Harry Kane had scored 6 goals in the entire tournament, making him the best scorer that year. And we all know Harry Kane by now, great player, England's greatest goal scorer of all time, genuinely an elite finisher. But how he got those 6 goals in 2018 was a bit fraudulent, because 5 of his 6 goals came in the group stage, and he won the whole Golden Boot. His campaign started against Tunisia with a tap-in and also a header in the game. And with 2 goals to set this off, it was the captain stepping up to lead England forward. And then came Panama. Yes, Panama. Like, if I'm being completely honest and not trying to offend anyone, Panama, they're not the team that's going to win the tournament or someone that's really going to put up a fight against England. And that's exactly what happened. Because in this game, England would win 6-1. And Kane would actually score a hat-trick, with 2 of the goals he scored being penalties. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. And what's even better about this hat-trick is that 2 of them were penalties, but also one of them was like a shot that clipped off Harry Kane's heel and then went into the back of the net. So it wasn't really even his goal, but it went down as his goal. But you must be thinking, okay, well, that's 5 goals. He scored 1 more. Maybe if it was a worldie, maybe he scored a 30-yard screamer. No. Let's just calm down, little birdie. Because his last goal was in the round of 16 against Colombia, and it was a penalty.
You serious?
And I always say this, but penalties aren't easy, and this was a big moment that he buried against Colombia. But then after that moment, Harry Kane didn't score another goal for the rest of the tournament. Nothing in the quarter-final against Sweden, and nothing in the semi-final against Croatia, where England would eventually crash out, losing the semi-final, and Croatia would end up playing France in that final. And this is not me trying to slander Harry Kane, this is me just giving context. 2018 he was the top goal scorer, he was the Golden Boot winner in the World Cup. But already at World Cup 2026, Harry Kane seems to be on way better terms, playing way better than he did back in 2018, and also strutting his stuff a bit more and grabbing. Pretty much he's on the same amount of goals, I'm pretty sure. And I actually think the guys chasing him that summer were better than him, with Griezmann actually scoring 4 goals in the tournament and getting 2 assists, whilst also being highly influential in a France side that would eventually go on to win that World Cup. Romelu Lukaku was also strutting his stuff for Belgium. Cristiano Ronaldo would score a hat-trick against Spain in the group stage. You also had Russia's Denis Cheryshev, who would bag a couple bangers as well. Mbappe as well was of course up there with the stars. But now let's go to 2014, where James Rodríguez would actually take home the Golden Boot, a central attacking midfielder. Now before the tournament that summer, no one in their right mind would have picked James Rodríguez as the Golden Boot winner come the end of it. Now Rodríguez was a highly rated prospect at Monaco before coming into this tournament. But after walking out of the tournament with the Golden Boot, he would become a Galactico in football. His tally in 2014 would be 6 goals. But here's what separates him and Harry Kane, because James would score in every single game that Colombia played, scoring in all 5 games from the group stage to the quarterfinals. And not once did this guy go missing. He opened his account against Greece, with a cool finish to seal a 3-0 win, whilst also grabbing 2 assists in that game as well. And that's what made this campaign stand out even more to everyone's eyes, because he wasn't just scoring, he wasn't just assisting, but he was Colombia, running the whole team from back to front. Then he would score a thumping header against Ivory Coast, helping Colombia win a tight-knitted game. Then you have that cheeky chip he did against Japan when he came on from off the bench, plus 2 more assists. And at that point it just felt like he was showing off, strutting his stuff on the world stage and saying to the big clubs around the world, please, come and pick me up. But the goal that gets highlighted and replayed every 4 years when a World Cup comes around is the goal he scored in the round of 16. A goal in the round of 16 against Uruguay at the Maracana. And with the ball dropping out of the sky, you only can talk about this moment in slow motion. with the heat taking over the moment and the bugs whizzing around his kit. His back toward the goal 25 yards out. He kills the ball dead on his chest, lets it fall, swivels and bang, volleying the ball off the underside of the bar. And with the sound of the crossbar pinging around the Maracana and the Colombian fans going crazy, James Rodríguez has just scored one of the best World Cup goals. One touch to set, one touch to score, and it's a marvellous goal. A goal that would actually win the Puskás award that year. And it's crazy because that wasn't even the only goal he would score in this game. He scored a second, helping Colombia win that and move on to the quarter-final. And even in the quarter-final where Colombia would lose to Brazil and Neymar would get that horrendous back injury, James Rodríguez would score Colombia's only goal in the game, scoring from the penalty spot and ending the tournament as top goal scorer. Now that is what a great Golden Boot run looks like. And notice again that Colombia didn't go on to win the World Cup. It was Germany, with Thomas Müller actually getting 5 goals that tournament, and Miroslav Klose becoming the all-time top goal scorer in World Cup history at that point. A record that's actually been broken by Messi and I'm pretty sure Mbappe in this year's World Cup. The top scorers that year would be Rodríguez, Müller, Neymar, Messi and Van Persie. And talking about Thomas Müller, we gotta go back to 2010 where he would win the Golden Boot. This was World Cup 2010 back in South Africa with the Vuvuzelas, taking over the stadiums. And this year the tournament's goal scoring would be headlined by another one of these youngsters. A 20-year-old German prospect in Thomas Müller. He would walk away with the Golden Boot but also the Best Young Player award, grabbing 5 goals in the tournament and 3 assists. But here's the wildest part about Thomas Müller winning the Golden Boot that year. Müller wouldn't be the only player to finish on 5 goals because Wesley Sneijder would join him, Diego Forlan would join him and David Villa would join him too. And how did Müller win it above these guys? It was his assists, grabbing 3, which was more than any of the other players mentioned. And I think that kind of tells you everything you need to know about Müller during this tournament, because he wasn't just a scorer, he just scored goals. He was more of a creator for this German side, a shadow striker behind the main number 9. And with his first goal in the tournament coming against Australia, from there he would just be full steam ahead. Because in that game he would also assist Lukas Podolski. And then came the knockouts where he actually would earn, his spot as one of the best goal scorers and top goal scorers in the tournament. Because in the round of 16 against England, yes, the game where Frank Lampard hits the crossbar and the ball clearly goes over the line, that it bounces out, and the game also where Germany thrashed England, Thomas Müller would actually score 2 of the goals. That was then 2 knockout goals in one game. And then in the quarter-final, Germany would come up against Messi's Argentina. And unfortunately for Messi, he would hold 4 goals to Germany, with Müller actually being the guy that opened the scoring in the game. Scoring inside the first 5 minutes of the game with like a header, and that was his 4th of the tournament. He would also pick up a yellow card in the game against Argentina, which would lead to him having a suspension. That was his 2nd yellow of the tournament, leading him to sit out against Spain. And with Thomas Müller out of this game, Germany would actually lose to Spain in the semi-final. But Müller would score his 5th goal in the game against Uruguay to aim for 3rd place, helping Germany win 3-2 and secure the bronze at the World Cup. And you gotta feel for Thomas Müller, because just imagine if he played against Spain in that semi-final. You never know what could have happened. He could have finished that tournament with 7 goals himself. But then you look around at the other strikers that were up there with him as the top goal scorer. David Villa goes down as one of the most understated and underrated scorers in football history. And he was up there for Spain, scoring 5 goals in a system that didn't really benefit his style of play. Then you had Wesley Sneijder also on 5 that was doing bits for the Netherlands. And I also forgot to mention that Gonzalo Higuaín had 4 goals this tournament too, but I'm pretty sure he scored 3 of them against South Korea. And lastly, I guess we'll go back to 2006, because this year at the World Cup, the amount of strikers that were just at the tournament and some scored and some didn't was crazy. But again, none of them are as prolific as the current goal scorers and Golden Boot racers in World Cup 2026. And that year back in 2006, it would be Miroslav Klose taking away the Golden Boot with 5 goals. And this was again, a Kane type Golden Boot, with 4 of Klose's 5 goals coming in the group stage. He would score twice against Costa Rica and then score another 2 against Ecuador. But then his fifth, and the one that actually mattered, came against Argentina. A game in the quarter-final between Germany and Argentina, Miroslav Klose would step up, with him leaping and actually scoring a header to equalise in the game. Germany would go on to win the penalty shootout at the end of the game, but we all know how their run ended in 2006, at the hands of the winners of that tournament. And the winners of that tournament also had strikers in the ranks that were classy, like Luca Toni, Inzaghi, Del Piero, Totti. You look at the caliber of strikers that were just at this tournament itself and it's absurd. Either the strikers aren't as prolific as they are today, or defences back then were just way more solid. You had R9 for Brazil and Adriano as well. Crespo was at this tournament, Thierry Henry, Lucas Podolski, Wayne Rooney was there for England and also Michael Owen. Ruud van Nistelrooy and Robin van Persie were there. For Sweden, Zlatan Ibrahimović and Larsson were there. Didier Drogba was there, Milan Baros was there. You also had the emerging icons of Lionel Messi and also Ronaldo. It was an insane tournament and the caliber of player was just incredible. The goal scorers were incredible, but still, out of all the World Cups that we have spoken about and all the Golden Boot races specifically that we've talked about in this video, none of them are coming close to what we are witnessing in 2026. Who's to say that Lionel Messi doesn't score against Egypt today, go through to the next round and score against the next opponents too? Anything could really happen, and there's a bunch of strikers that are not up there at the top right now with 7, but are around about there. Harry Kane has still got a fair chance as well. The level of scorer in 2026 must have improved, or you guys let me know, are defences in 2026 just absolutely shocking compared to World Cup 2006, where even though the caliber of striker and scorer was so much better, the amount of goals scored in the tournament wasn't as close as the one we are witnessing this year. And quick side note, if you see that I am sweating in this video, it is boiling hot. Not one window is open in this room, there is a massive light and there is a green screen. That is the reason why. And also I found out the other day that my slider is ripped. So if there's any brands that want to send me a slider, then let me know. Otherwise we're just going to deal with this slider and never replacing these. Can't lie. But yeah, this has been Jibrils as always. Make sure you leave a like, comment and subscribe. If you want to listen to these videos, you can listen to them on Spotify. If you want unlisted content, then you can, get my, the channel membership. And if you want to catch up with me, then you go to Instagram. Actually, I don't use Instagram, but we got someone posting reels over there now. So, if you want to go and follow that, you can. But yeah, stay safe, stay blessed, and peace.